Hi everybody, how are you today? Welcome. This is MOONCAST and I'm Luna from Luna ơi. I'm a Vietnamese communist born and living in Vietnam. And in my MOONCAST today, we're gonna talk to a very awesome Filipino comrade, and we're gonna talk about mostly everything about Philippines today, about the Philippines and what's going on over there. And I'm very excited, and I'm also because the media outlets, we mostly focus on the West, and many of us do not know much about what's going on in the Philippines at all. So I'm very excited and I'm ready to learn a lot today. Let's welcome our guest. Hi, Karl.
Hello everyone.
Hi, how are you?
Doing good, but I could be doing better, but that's okay.
Can you please introduce yourself to the audience in the chat?
Sure. So my name is Karl. I'm a co-editor of Laban magazine, which means to fight or to resist in Tagalog. We're a cross-organizational youth community magazine that's oriented around Filipino culture and liberation. I also make YouTube videos here on YouTube. I go under the name Bulag Bandit Media, as well as having my own articles and website where I discuss topics that I think are important to me in the sphere of being Filipino and a Filipino American.
Yeah. As I'm very happy to have you here today. So can you tell me a little bit? I know that the election is also kind of happening right now in the Philippines. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so right now we have the upcoming presidential election. There's also other ones going on at the same time, but for the main candidates and I guess main key points, some of the frontrunners include Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. So he is the son of the former Philippine dictator Ferdinand Marcos Sr. His running mate is Sara Duterte, who is the daughter of current president and kind of, I guess, infamous character Rodrigo Duterte, who's guilty of so much things in the Philippines. So now, as the president, they're also running against the main opposition leaders, Leni Robredo. She is the current vice president and a member of the kind of coalition opposition against Duterte. And the other candidates include the mayor of Manila, Isko Moreno, and Ping Lacson. They're kind of, I guess, like center-right candidates, but they're trying to be populists. And, of course, the famous boxer, Manny Pacquiao.
Oh. So now let me, how many parties are there in the Philippines?
There's a lot. So unlike many of the countries that I'm familiar with, especially because I grew up in the West partially, there's not really a monopoly in the Philippines in terms of, okay, well, you have these one or two or three parties. And parties spring up all the time. And actually, Duterte's party, as an example, Rodrigo Duterte's party, actually split up. And there's multiple factions. They call themselves PDP Laban. And yeah, there's two factions that literally split mid his presidency. So mainly the way that things happen in the Philippines is through candidates and I guess their own primary following and social capital, political capital, I guess. And it's important because that means some people who are not really the most savory are able to capture a lot of the electorate or the people who are actually voting, right? Because they either have a dynasty, which is a very prevalent thing in the Philippines. There are political families who exercise control, especially through their wealth, or maybe they might not be a dynasty quite just yet, but they are powerful people in general just because they have wealth or they have connections to people who do have those kind of resources at their fingertips.
Okay, so they have many parties. But
Mhm.
like do you have any like main parties, like the biggest parties in the Philippines, and what are they?
So right now, the biggest parties are probably the Liberal Party, that literally,
Oh.
and they're actually part of the same international group of liberal parties around the world. That it's actually, for example, one you might be familiar with is Justin Trudeau. His party is in the
Oh.
same alliance as Leni Robredo, so that's why we have our reservations. I do anyways, and then there's also the Unity Team Party, which is what Bongbong Marcos is part of with Sara Duterte, and then there's also Duterte proper, the father. He is part of, like I said, I mentioned PDP Laban. We also have
Okay.
our, I guess, to the left party, Makabayan. They're actually a bloc or a coalition, and that it consists of many different parties. The way that it works really is that we have party lists. It's a party list system. So in terms of general parties, there's usually it's very parliamentarian in the sense that there's coalitions and agreements and factional groups.
I see. Huh. So like at the same time, this year the election is also going on in Brazil
Hmm.
in October, actually. So exactly what months the election in the Philippines will happen?
So it's actually happening next month in May, or
Wow.
really it's right
Wow.
there. Yeah, and
Wow.
I guess it's posing a really big question in a lot of our minds because the campaign season is rolling up and finishing up, and we're just kind of left in wait to see because of the way that uh, how many people are a captive audience to whichever candidate, right?
I see. So right next month, huh? In the email you sent me, you just briefly mentioned about a leftist candidate that just got like shot, right?
Yeah, so he didn't get actually physically hit, but they were actually shot at. His name is
Mm.
Nery Colmenares. He's running for a senatorial seat in the Philippines, and he is
Mm.
part of the Makabayan bloc directly. He's actually an
Mm.
attorney, and he was part of a group in Bukidnon, and they were actually talking to indigenous community leaders about ancestral domain because many of the indigenous groups in the Philippines have been fighting for ancestral domain over their indigenous lands because many corporations or maybe nations in general want to use natural resources on their land, and it's extremely exploitative, and they're trying to find ways around that, especially to try to find a political solution. And many of the discourse I see online, especially about the particular event that just happened this month in April, there's a lot of people who I tend to see in comments, people are saying things like, oh, this is dramatized, this is to get people to vote for him or things like that. But I mean, in reality, if that were the case, I mean, it's a lot of danger to put yourself in just for that kind of return, right?
Yeah, and wow. So, can you tell us a little bit about the situation? The general situations going on in the Philippines, like
Yeah.
yeah. Because what I know about going to things in the Philippines was like Duarte was very strong and tough against like drug, something like that, and it
Yes.
was really crazy. Even like on the Vietnamese, on the official Vietnamese news, it was like, what the hell? So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so actually Duterte was cited by the International Criminal Court, and that's actually one of the things that the reason why the Philippines left, because there was a multitude of international organizations for even like the UN, which the UN is,
Yeah.
we can say what we want about that, but the special rapporteur of the UN even kind of admitted that there are glaring issues and actual proof of misconduct by the Duterte administration and their kind of rollout of policies against people who suffer from drug addiction and the drug trade, I guess. And
Yeah.
I think an important kind of thing to see is that it kind of follows a trend a little bit, because around the same time that Duterte was also elected as president of the Philippines, so was Joko Widodo, who was the leader of Indonesia for um, some time. I don't believe that he's in power anymore. I could be wrong, but that was at least in the 2010s. But
Mm.
there's extreme cases of extrajudicial killings, especially of people who are involved in drugs and drug addiction. And the problem is that it's not being treated as a public health issue as it should be. Because ultimately, the reason why many people get involved in drugs in the Philippines is A, to make money because the economic situation is so dire and harsh, or that, you know, they have no other alternatives, and they have mental health problems. That's a kind of a big one, and ultimately that's kind of what you see sometimes abroad as well, that it's a result of a failing infrastructure that causes the problems that people inevitably try to solve with violence. And that's kind of what Duterte's thing was, because at the beginning a lot of people believed that Duterte was kind of like a quote unquote liberal presence in Philippine politics. Um,
Mm.
he claimed that he would be quote unquote one of the more left candidates in the elections, but obviously that hasn't really panned out, right? And it's because he tried to make a massive push for populism, and sadly, because of the general state of Philippine society in terms of being heavily, I guess, propagandized by American narratives and values,
Sure. Yeah.
it it lends itself very easily, if you are populist, to you can take advantage of people's uh, some people, honestly, some desire to, you know, be extremely harsh on people who are suffering from drug addiction or in the drug trade. I mean, even my own family, to be honest.
So, I mean, I gotta say that here in the last few years, the news in Vietnam also had some news about the Philippines, but actually it's not. There's no good news. Mostly about, you know, the curfew happened and how presidents like sending militia, like military all over the city to like arrest people. And I have a one friend. She is working in the Philippines right now,
Mhm.
and she told me that like the gap between the rich and the poor is pretty big over there. She said like generally speaking, like rich people are very 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 rich, but there are
Yes.
also a lot of poor areas. So can you like explain a little bit more about this? Why is that?
Yes, and it kind of harkens back to a time during, I mean, everything. Many of our problems harken back to the time of colonialism. And many of the people who hold wealth now, they've been collecting it for hundreds of years or decades because they inherited it from the, you know, the colonial period. I mean, some of the richest people in the Philippines, for example, the Ayala family. There's a big thing we have in the Philippines in terms of, like I mentioned in our discussion beforehand, that there are families and clans of people and dynasties that hold a lot of wealth. And so eh, they keep it very, it's very gate kept in terms of how that happens, right? They want to keep their hold over power, and they'll do anything they want to do that, including, you know, siding with the United States or foreign capital. So
Yeah.
an example of that is the Ayala family. They're actually like straight up white, related to the Spaniards, and you know they are one of the biggest land owning people in the land owning clan in the Philippines. They have
Wow.
corporations that are companies that are under their belt that everyone knows. You know, even the malls are named after them, right? So I mean, I've even seen recently that because I'm Filipino, I use Facebook, and I get advertisements about um, investing. They try to put Facebook ads out there to invest in the Ayala corporation's uh,
Yeah.
kind of involvement in owning properties actually here in Hawaii, right? And I'm like, wow, that their reach is so high. And so that's kind of basically the way it works, is that if you're part of um, the wealthy elite, everything stays in the wealthy elite, right?
Mm.
Um, and the only real way to kind of get there sometimes, especially if you don't have any inherited wealth, is to, you know, lean down to foreign powers, capital, things like that.
I see. Well, um, Vietnam was also, you know, colonized and imperialized by the West. We just got lucky that we won our revolution and we can have our self-determination, but not the same as the Philippines. The history of the Philippines is so complicated, Can you please like educate me and our audience a little bit, like brief history of the Philippines under like colonialism and in the modern time like this?
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, there's a connection. There's two different imperial powers, right? You have Spain, and then you have the United States. And as much as um, I know, the Spanish influence on the Philippines has a direct connection to the America. I feel like, especially what we're told in American schooling, is that, well, once America took over the Philippines, it was like a radical like paradigm shift. But
Yeah.
in reality, many of the people who were siding with the Spanish sided with the Americans. So, that would be business owners, that would be people who had things to lose, right? They have risks. And for those people, they cared more about those risks and their personal wealth over, the self-determination and sovereignty of the Philippines. And ultimately, what that means, what we see in stories and recollections of people who lived under American occupation is that many of them gave in. There's a story that I read about Malvar. Malvar was a leader of kind of the resistance to the Americans in the early 1900s in Batangas, which is a part of the Philippines, near where I did actually did a video about him, Macario Sakay. Macario Sakay was one of the last revolutionary fighters against the Americans before they actually executed him in 1900s. But Malvar actually surrendered to the Americans, seeing that many of his former peers and colleagues became local administrators. So the Americans put those people into power. So, people who were in previous positions of power, they liked it. They liked that the fact that it gave them safety and security under the Spanish, and the same thing happened under the Americans. There's a lot of history, and I really cannot fully encompass it, but I mean, I would just view it from the viewpoint that the Philippines was exploited for its natural resources and, of course, its working power. And the Philippines was a major mainstay in the Spanish Empire's kind of grip over certain trade in Asia,
Yeah.
and then that
Eh,
led to the Americans.
Yeah, yeah. And the Philippines also got involved in the Vietnam War too. We learned about
Hmm.
that in school. Yeah, it's just so complicated because your country is also being colonized and imperialized, and you were forced to, to abandon your culture and forced to like lick the
Hmm.
boots of the masters. But you also like it's just so complicated, and you also have your own like, can I say it like a right wing kind of movement in your country? Because I do see that like Duterte, he's like like cheating communists really harsh.
Yes.
So, yeah. So what do you say about that? Why is that happening? Why did it happen, and how is it going on right now?
So I mean, it's pretty internationally well known. I've seen a lot of big media outlets talk about it. But Duterte is actually from Mindanao, which is in the southern part of the Philippines, and many of the forces that are at play, the reason I believe in certain part is that those forces, attacked regions under his control, because he was actually the former mayor of Davao, and his, I guess, anti-communism comes from a part of himself that is also understandably part of how America also continues to hold its control over the Philippines, in terms of he was born right in between the two eras of the American control and then the quote unquote independence, right? And so much of the information and much of the I guess the conditions that created Duterte were, um, I guess, like it really just pushed him into anti-communism. And he claimed to be sort of a left wing candidate, like I said earlier, but
Mm,
ultimately that doesn't actually mean anything. Many of his allies, many of the people who he chooses to get involved with, are completely antithetical to every step of his government's um, response, for example, to COVID-19, right? There was a scandal, if you're familiar with Farmally, if you've heard of that before, that um, he actually had a cabal with somebody who was actually illegally selling COVID-19 goods, and there were kickbacks going on. There was, you know, surmountable amount of evidence to say that it's possible to very likely, almost certainly, that there was corruption going on, right? And so, I, in terms of for him, there is personal benefit, and that's sort of the trend is in terms of Philippine politicians and Philippine people of power, that they have a benefit in getting the capital and the wealth that most other Filipinos don't have, and they'll do anything to do that, including trying to masquerade themselves as a leftist, but in reality being extremely right wing. And
Yeah.
there's really nothing that can really deter that, unless very attractive things like foreign capital and wealth, and the West ceases to put pressure on the Philippines.
Yeah. So the election is coming next month. What
Mhm.
do you think will happen?
I'm trying to be as optimistic as possible, um, because obviously the race is actually fairly neck and neck, and I've seen in some places, especially Pulse Asia, they've actually rated that Bongbong Marcos is up in the polls and such, and so I'm generally pretty concerned that Bongbong will win, especially because at every frame and any kind of contestation to his actual campaign or him running, he was actually able to still keep running despite people, protesting to get him not to run and things like that. And
Mhm.
I feel like that press attention may have, inadvertently made his name more popular, right? But that's yet to be seen. That's academically studied. But my prediction really is that I really hope that Lenny Robredo wins, in the sense that it gets rid of Duterte as president, because he's actually running for vice president. Because in the Philippines, it's actually not allowed for you to run for president twice, because we have 6-year terms. Um,
Mm.
However, I still have my reservations for that, because we also do have a more left candidate for president. His name is Lodi de Guzman, and um, actually, I misspoke earlier. I'm really sorry. There's like a lot of information going through my brain, but yeah, Lodi de Guzman, who he was the one who was shot at,
Yeah.
um, in Bukidnon, and ultimately, if I had to choose, I would want him to be president. But if I had to make a prediction in terms of what is more closer to reality, I really hope it's Lenny Robredo.
Okay. um. Wow. Well, I mean, so okay. So, what do you think about the society of the Philippines after the election? Like,
Mm.
what are you like? What are your like guess prediction about that?
So my guess, honestly, is that it will kind of keep the status quo. I mean,
Mm.
realistically, Bongbong Marcos's positions, like let's say he becomes president, right? Under Duterte, we're in a phase where we are kind of in this right wing movement, right? We're moving further right than we were before, and even then, it wasn't really that great to begin with, right? Because leftism was curbed really hard. I mean, starting as soon as the Americans left the Philippines, um, in terms of having a white governor, right? But even still, many of the people who have become Philippine president or guided Philippine society were part of this class of people who sided with America, who believed in the American promise, right? And so I think for moving forward after the election, I think it will really prove to Philippine society whether or not it's you know believable for the Philippines to really stand on its own and to create a future for itself that's beyond what we think is the norm, which is allying always with the West. And either way, if let's say even Lenny wins, because Lenny is a liberal, and kind of center, center left, center ish. Um, even if she wins, it will show people maybe perhaps that okay, because even in that sense, she's still pretty okay as a relationship with the United States or the West, that really it's a lose lose to continue along that path of let's just continue to hope and wait for the West to give us our chance to shine.
Yeah. Hey, yeah. So generally speaking, situation in the Philippines is pretty, dark and very chaotic in a sense that, like, what about the leftist movement over there? It's a strong, or they've been cracked down a lot, or what's up?
Yeah. So there's actually a legitimate national task. It's called the National Task Force for Ending Local Communist like armed conflict.
Mm.
Yeah, NTF-LCAC. So I mean, right now, I think it's in a period of slow growth, not necessarily the same thing that we saw in the 20th century. Because during the 20th century, of course, during the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, we had Marcos as president, and you had people springing to join movements because they wanted to fight against the Marcos's dictatorship. But now it's a little bit obfuscated. It's a little foggy for some people, because some people listen to Duterte, they listen to former people in our government, and they think that there are things that are happening and things that play that benefit them. Right? It's not as clear cut as it used to be sometimes for some people in the Philippines right now. Right? And it's the same thing with my family. They believe, well, some things are changing, so I think I'll be good on trying to try something new. And that what that means for the movement is that there are some people who are able to see it, and especially for people like myself who are disabled, because it gives me an angle to see, okay, well, here's the thing, right? If I really wanted for liberation for myself, for example, as a disabled Filipino person, none of what anyone is talking about is going to help me. So it's easier for me to see. But for someone who may have a little bit more wealth, who is able-bodied, then they might say, well, okay, well, I guess it's difficult right now, but I guess I can make things work. And so that's kind of like there's a lot of a mindset that I see people having, and they have that try to attitude to try to say, okay, well, things have to get significantly worse for them to get significantly better. I guess is what guides people not to be part of leftist movement. So it's very slow. However, I do see that the biggest part of growth that I see personally is in the West, because the Filipino diaspora is such a big part of Philippine society. And in what I've seen, like in a project that we just created, Laban Magazine, we started, and ever since then it's been going up and up. And it's because it's having a greater audience in the West, because Filipinos in the West see it easier, in the sense that they see how actually bad life is. Um, it didn't actually get any better for them once they came to other countries like the United States.
So can I ask a little bit about the Filipino diaspora
Of
in the
course.
US? What are the, like, general view on the empire? Like, you say, like, because I have a lot of experience with Vietnamese diaspora. It's kind
I've
of
heard you talk about it.
complicated. So yeah. So what about you? What about your situation?
Yeah, honestly, I would like to echo some of the same feelings, that it's very complicated, because it's difficult to get, I guess, angry or mad at Filipino people here in the diaspora, because when you're separated from the land, when you're separated from your primogenitor, your people who are your ancestors and your forefathers and such, you don't have access to the same information and the same level of understanding about what your country is like and what conditions happen to create what the Philippines is like now, right? And so many of us are honestly really uninformed and have become disinterested for a multitude of reasons, but many of them being the fact that they are living in the diaspora in a place that is hostile towards them, right? That is leaning towards eliminating their culture, that is leaning
Yeah.
towards hyper influencing their country. And the general position, other than maybe the occasional, oh man, well, that Duterte guy, he's not savory. It's not really nuanced in the sense that, okay, I understand the Philippine electoral system. I understand the general idea of who was in power before in the Philippines and how does the dynamic of wealth and inequality work in the Philippines. There's very few of that, and it's growing, which is a good sign. Like I said, I think projects like our magazine and building organizations that really talk about and expand the spotlight on issues like what's happening in the Philippines now.
Well, about Vietnam, I
Mhm.
need to compare a little bit.
Go ahead.
So I mostly like there are two main kind of chants in Viet diaspora. First, are like of course like the anti-communist diaspora who grew up in that kind of environment and received all the anti-communist propaganda from their own family and from the environment that they were born into and living in. And the other channel is that like, and I see more and more people are like this. And lots of them started questioning all the indoctrination that they've been receiving their whole life, and especially when they encounter a channel like me, they started
Mhm.
questioning about what actually happened. So a lot of Vietnamese diaspora in the US, UK, Canada, and Australia started commenting on my channel saying like I offer them a whole totally different perspective about their own
Mhm.
home country, the country that they've been just hating their whole life. Something like that. It's heartbrokening and heartwarming at the same time because like the Filipinos diaspora, the culture, the bride being taken away from them because they were born and they're living in the imperial core. The countries are literally imperialized and kill their own people and now force them to just hate their own country. It's very complicated feelings like that. And I don't know, I just hope that, all the diasporas will start to break out of that indoctrination and propaganda and start looking at what actually is going on in their home country and learn their own lessons.
You're so right, and I think a major part of getting the diaspora to be more interested in that kind of thing is to educate them on Philippine society before colonization, or to be more interested in being indigenous Filipinos. Because the thing is that I've heard this before from someone who's indigenous from another part of the world, but indigenous peoples have honestly sometimes been the first leftists, right? And the thing about it is, when we trace back our lineage, when we trace back what our societies were like, it shows us that there's a whole new realm that, or like a whole new way that society can structure itself, and that it doesn't have
Mm.
to be that the way it is, especially because again, as the diasporic Filipinos, we have such a difficult time, right? Having that, I guess, hope in the past, that knowing that having a different lifestyle and having a different system is possible is honestly like kind of like the video that EJ put out about revolutionary optimism, right? That
Yeah.
it gives us a light to follow at the end of the tunnel, that hey, this is possible, and our societies can be more inclusive, our societies can be better to people, and recognize their humanity, as opposed to mere things to control, mere things to be imperialized, right?
Exactly. Okay, now let's see, because you told us that you're a disabled Filipino person. So
Hmm.
can we talk a little bit about the situation of
Of course.
disabled? Yeah, in the Philippines. Yes, please.
And I think I learned this from my international relations professor, Dr. Larry Toole, but he always told me that the one thing that you got to do when you're examining difficult situations is to look at a map, right? And for many disabled people in the Philippines, urban centers are some of the only places that is accessible and really in a way works for their lifestyles. And much of the priority on making areas, especially in rural areas, accessible and giving them things that they need to help them with their disabilities or preventative measures like good healthcare, public infrastructure, there really isn't much of any of either. And it's really ironic because I mean, there's a, I guess, a stereotype or a joke that we have in the diaspora that many Filipino people work in healthcare, and if that stereotype were a positive thing, that would mean that wow, the Philippines would be great for disabled people. We'd have all medical infrastructure that would work for us, that would help us, help disabled people reach success in their life. However, that's not the
Yeah.
case, and it's because of how people are drawn into major urban centers because those areas have the capital, that have the wealth, and especially for disabled people from rural areas like myself, it would be extremely difficult to almost impossible for us as people with disabilities to live comfortably in a way that is humane for us in many of the rural areas and the provinces that are not major urban centers like cities like Manila, right? And that's kind of one of the things that really irks me when candidates like Isko Moreno, who is the mayor of Manila, makes comments about how we need to I guess improve life for people with disabilities, because if he really had cared, then he would have been advocating for it for a long time, and not just now to get brownie points for people who care about people with disabilities or disabled people like ourselves, right? um, and there would be much more of a focus on, yes, let's make Manila accessible, but let's also give resources and make other places in the Philippines accessible so that they don't have to all amass in Manila and strain the public infrastructure, that what little public infrastructure does exist, because many of the infrastructure in the Philippines is privatized. I mean, like there are highways and tollways, and living in a place where that doesn't that doesn't exist, it's very jarring and shocking to have to see things like that, where just to do something as simple as move yourself, right? Transportation, it's privatized. You got to pay, right? You got to pay someone.
Yeah. So the also so I guess do you have universal healthcare, or how does the healthcare system work over there?
The healthcare system is a work in progress. So there was they instituted PhilHealth, and it works sort of similarly to like Medicare in the United States.
Mm.
However, it's not as expensive as it needs to be, especially for people who live, like I said, in provinces and rural areas, because some of the things that even I guess a modern healthcare can provide, they just don't have any of those things, right? There's
Wow.
areas like in Sulu in Holo where their hospital was swamped during COVID. They didn't have the equipment that they need. Imagine living in an area where the nearest hospital doesn't have an X-ray machine, right?
How?
Those are major challenges. Where oh, this clinic or the nearest healthcare facility in general doesn't have a surgical room, right? And access to healthcare has been such a problem. And there's actually uh, people that I'm familiar with that I help out. They actually do medical missions to these rural areas, to villages, and it could be as simple as just making sure that they have access to clean water, which is a difficult one, especially because a lot of resource hungry corporations, they put chemicals in water, or there's open pit mining and all that kind of nasty things that can really create extremely dangerous situations for people who live in rural areas that don't have access to hospitals with state of the art equipment, that even really during the COVID-19 crisis, even in urban centers, um, those places were swamped with people, right? There were cases of people passing out and dying in vehicles, and I'm sorry if that triggers anyone, but it's such a big a reality that the Philippine healthcare system was strained, and even the nurses at certain Philippine hospitals, they went on strike because they were being overworked, and they couldn't even um, pay them in a way that was nice. And that's why actually a lot of Filipino nurses end up in different countries like the United States, because the Philippines just can't even afford to pay them properly for a
Wow.
multitude of reasons, either for greed or the fact that they can't.
Wow. It's sad, huh?
Hmm.
Uh, Though I gotta say that first, the healthcare system in Vietnam is, I think, is very different from your system over there in the Philippines, because mostly we have two kind of insurance for Vietnam. It's we don't have universal healthcare. That is a fact, and I'm sad about that, and I wish that we have universal healthcare. But our situation right now, system right now is that we have national healthcare and private healthcare. So, for example, most of Vietnamese people, about 90% of Vietnamese people, or something like that, have national health care. Like my mom, for example, she buy a national health care for a year for like 25 $30 for a year, like that. Like that, and then if we buy according to following our family members, it's going to be like down to even 50% off. So means that my mom bought it the first price, so like $30, and if I buy it, I'm gonna have 50% off of it, and it's pretty awesome in a sense that we can just go to all kind of public hospitals in our areas. We have like every village or every community will have a medical center run by the state. And then every district will have a district hospital and then provincial hospital and all kinds like that. So there are actually a lot of choices for Vietnamese to go to hospital, and it's pretty affordable. The thing that the most expensive is the disease like cancer. If you have cancer, it's like
Mm.
so hard, or like severe heart disease, but like that kind of thing is like they're expensive everywhere in the world, except you have a universal health care, something like that. Well, the private health care is for like the middle class people to the upper class people, when like they can beside the national healthcare, they buy like private healthcare, like the insurance like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of interesting that it would really be helpful if the Philippines even had a similar system to that, because in personal experience, you know, I've known people in my family or my our personal spaces and friends and things like that, communities that they will put out constantly, even just for something as simple as medication. They need money for that, that they cannot do it on
Yeah.
their own. And in a system where we don't have we can't get rid of the specter of private insurance and the all of the challenges and all the hardship that it brings there. I'm really not seeing how Filipinos sometimes can really sit and say that the way that the current healthcare system is oriented is working for everyone, not just for disabled people or just disabled bodied people, for everyone, right? And that's kind of one of the primary reasons why I myself am in the place that I am now in the Imperial Corps, because ultimately, a person like myself living there would be such a problem for
Mm.
being not just being disabled, but also being sick in general. If I have to pay for the healthcare for my eyes as a low vision blind person, well, how am I going to get the money to, I don't know, if I get a cold, if I get COVID, if I get injured, I burn myself, things like that. How would I would be able to afford it? And that's kind of the problem that many Filipinos face is if they get injured, if they have any kind of sickness or illness, oh, well, that's going to be a really dark time, just because of how much it costs and the sacrifices that needs to be made to make sure that, our lives or humanity is safe.
Yeah. It sucks, right? Because um lots of people have been believing that, like, well, the Philippines, like the Filipino people under the help from the USA, you should have been so rich, so
Mhm.
like everything should
Mm.
be so good, but
Even the number one thing that they claim about Americans assisting the Philippines with the military or
oh
defense,
yeah.
it's such a myth. I mean, even just talking about occupying bases and what American soldiers do or American members of the imperial military do, all the way to how it instigates international conflict. I mean, I have a certification in international relations, like peace studies and stuff like that, and you know kind of watching what's happening in Europe, it's like, well, I'm not really sure how countries in Asia like China or just anyone really can really say, oh, well, I feel safe and I feel like I'm in a state of peace when America is putting ships and putting airplanes and putting soldiers and sailors and pilots for fighter jets in countries like the Philippines. How can you really feel you're going to be in a state of peace, right? I just really don't see how that works.
Yeah, it's the same with, the U.S. military occupation in South Korea.
Mm-hmm.
About 30% of sexual assault happened in South Korea caused by U.S. military personnel. 30% of all sexual assault. It's just a huge problem. Do you know anything about that? The sexual assault in the USA?
And in the Philippines,
in the Philippines.
Yeah, for American soldiers, and that it's a really, really, really prevalent issue. I mean, you can actually watch the documentary about it. Her name was Jennifer Laude, and an American Marine actually killed her. She was a trans woman, and he basically claimed that because she was a trans woman, he got scared. The I believe what it's called in law is the oh my goodness. Basically, he used the defense that because it was a trans woman that he went, that was his excuse for killing Jennifer Laude, and obviously that's a BS excuse, right?
That's horseshit.
There's no kind of justification or anything that you could say. You killed someone, right?
Exactly.
And it happens all the time. And somebody like him, actually, Joseph Pemberton, the Marine that killed Jennifer Laude, he was set free. He didn't even serve the term that he was initially sentenced to. And another thing was that he wasn't, I guess there was like a debate early on when he was still imprisoned about, are we going to keep him in an actual Philippine jail, or will we put him on a military base? Will we put him in American custody in the Philippines? There was a huge debate over that. And it's like, no, he deserves to be punished for his crime. And he shouldn't get any breaks like, oh, he'll be put on a base and he'll be, protected. People like him, honestly, at that point, they don't deserve protection. He doesn't. The people like him, and it's the thing is that it's very normalized because it does happen a lot, it's really crazy because actually, I've heard a story from someone that I know that, wow, it turns out somebody that knew that guy who killed Jennifer Laude is living in the same area that I do, or goes to school there.
Wow.
And it's like, wow, have you no shame to even admit that or say that out loud, right? And that's kind of the state of affairs. Like it, I'm sorry for the people of Korea. I'm sorry for the people of Japan and of Okinawa and the Ryukyu Islands, because that's also where American bases and service members do those kind of tragedies. And all we can really do is to really resist it and not give in to the violence, the inhumane, heinous violence that they perpetrate.
Yeah. Karl Camel said he was granted absolute pardon by Duterte. Yeah, and Duterte is by no means anti-imperialist.
Yeah, no way. Even though he tries to paint himself that way, even though he tries to, like, look at me, and he tries to do all those PR stunts. There is no excuse for his actions then and everything that he's done up to this point.
The Japan communist said, my sister, who is bi and trans, recently did a protest in Wisconsin regarding a bill that would endanger trans folks. Yeah. There's a whole world right now that like passing bills that like endanger trans people, LGBTQ plus. People. It's just sickening. People say that like the they called it like the trans panic defense or
yes,
gay
that's what
panic
it is.
defense. Yeah. It's just disgusting.
And sorry, go ahead.
It's just another question. So if you wanna finish your point, do it.
Oh yeah, I was going to say that kind of up to our point earlier about how a lot of Filipino culture was eliminated, and looking back at being as part of an indigenous community, because that's what us from the islands are. In many of our traditional religions or mythologies or histories, there have been people who have been LGBTQ, And the thing about colonialization is that because everything is kind of put through the lens of their worldview, right? Those things were eliminated. They were given excuses. They were like, oh, that's not right. That's not good. And that's why we have to civilize the Filipino people, quote unquote, right? Because we had figures in our history who were women leaders, who were LGBTQ, who might have been intersex or something like that. It's such a big part of the erasure that the imperialists continue to perpetrate in the Philippines and for people who live in the diaspora. But go ahead. Yes.
Yeah. Just since you talk about that, in Vietnam we also have the same kind of thing that like for hundreds of years we have a whole religion based on trans people like that, and it's called we call it like a lên đồng or the thờ mẫu kind of religious. It means that like we worship our mothers. And in that in this kind of huge religion in Vietnam, we believe that there are some special people with special ability that the spirits will go and take over their body for a while, and that ghost will decide the way they act and the way they talk, and people would look at those people as the ghost speak the inside of them, not because of how they are or how their gender actually are. It's something like that, and it's very interesting because I did talk to a Vietnamese trans woman, and she said like that was how trans people in Vietnam for hundreds of years we that religious help them express themselves, and the important thing is the spirit inside you, not just the body. So yeah. So what is religious about trans people, related to trans people in the Philippines? Is that like the same or different?
So there are dozens of indigenous traditions and religions in the Philippines, and I think that's kind of one of the things that the West is responsible for, is to erase that fact and to kind of obfuscate that the Filipino people are not a monolith, right? There isn't just one kind of Filipino person, right? Some of us, right? Some of us, I mean, some people, they even try to paint that the Philippines is a Christian nation, that all of us are Catholics or all of us are Christian. However, I mean, that's not the case, right? Historically, a lot of parts of the Philippines, regions in the Philippines, have been Islamic or Muslim, right? And then before that, there was influence by Hindu and Buddhism. There's parts of the Philippines that have influences from that, and that's actually why some regions of the Philippines do. I believe they call this in Thailand the Y, right? Some indigenous peoples still use that as a symbol of greeting or something else, right? And part of the kind of one of the things I know was the kind of the messing up of a god named Bathala, right? And usually people say that there's kind of a debate around this because we don't know for sure, right? The Western scholars messed this one up, right? We don't know for sure, but what we can kind of know and find out, and what I know personally, just to make sure that I cover my bases, not 100% sure, but there's theories about how either they were intersex or that maybe they were spiritually both male female, things like that. And so that's the thing, we won't really know for sure, but there are instances and cases for indigenous groups or tribes that they have figures in their traditions and mythology that are either transgender or other parts of the LGBTQ plus community.
Yeah. Okay. Very interesting. There's a question from Alex Chang Dragon. How much influence does the church have in the Philippines?
I mean, immense. I mean, in the election, like some of the archbishops and things, God, what's his name? Tagle. He constantly comments on things that the government is doing and the moves that what is politically happening in the Philippines. I mean, in the Philippines, there's even a festival where people legitimately recreate the part of the Bible where Jesus is put on the cross. That legitimately happens, or that there's a prayer like I believe it's like a celebration of the Black Nazarene, and thousands upon thousands of people go in to celebrate that. So there is a great influence, and really something that's happened really recently is that one of Duterte's allies in this church and religious space, um, Kibolo, I forget his first name. It starts with an A. He's a leader of a major church organization, and he was actually busted for sexual misconduct, for sexual crimes against children and things of those nature. And it's really sad to see that members of the church and the religion have so much power, and they're using it to do things like that. And actually, somebody like him has the power to he actually owns either partially or in full a media organization, right? And so what does that say? That means that they can control narratives. They can put out things into society that can push things into their favor.
Well, Karl said the church still holds a large influence over Philippine politics. For example, Leni Robredo, the most progressive candidate, still cannot say she is pro-abortion, or she can't say she supports the same-sex marriage, and instead say civil unions in fear of alienating the Catholic vote. Wow.
Same thing with Duterte, actually, when he was trying to claim that he was the most progressive in the last election in the 2010s, that he said, I'll be in favor of civil unions. And the other thing about, I guess, the church's control over the Philippines is that we have to remember that they've also been part of the state organ of control of the Philippines. And that, in the post-World War II era, Diosdado Macapagal, who's one of the former presidents of the Philippines, he actually armed Christian groups to actually settle parts of Mindanao, because parts of Mindanao are, like I said, they're either indigenous communities or Muslim communities, and he armed, Christian groups, and they were responsible for violence against people of other religions and backgrounds, and purely because they wanted to there was actually like a commission or a group of people who were responsible for, quote unquote, bringing those people into civilization, right? To bring them into what the imperialized Filipinos thought was, I guess, the right thing to do, which obviously it wasn't, right? So it's not only that the Philippines churches have and the influential leaders have wealth, it's that they have connections to the state, right? And they use the state as an organ to try to do what they want to do.
Sounds like the U.S.
Yes, very much so.
It's so different in Vietnam. It's just so different. So, just long story short, in Vietnam, we also have many religions. Most of them are like Christianity and Buddhism, Muslim, Hindu, something like Hinduism too. And the thing is that we have freedom of religion, means that there's no kind of you will receive no kind of pressure if you want to join a religion. But the thing is that our government and our Communist Party, they are no, what do you call it? Religions do not have influence in our government and our Communist Party of Vietnam. That is very important thing. Means that our system, our decisions, our policies will not be in favor of one religion over the others. That's the difference. And that is why Vietnam, even to this day, Vietnam been claimed like there's no freedom of religion in Vietnam. It's really bullshit. Because it's just because we do not allow religion to influence the political decisions of Vietnam. It doesn't mean that we don't have freedom of religion. It means that we are actually more free than you, because we do not in just favor of one religion over the others. And that is why only then you can have the true equality between the religions. That was I was really shocked when I heard the spokesperson of White House in the US. At the end of the speech, she said what? May God bless you all, or something like that. It was what? What if I don't believe in God? I'm sorry, I believe in Buddha, or I believe in Allah or something. I don't believe in your God. Like, this is really like freedom of religion in those countries means that freedom for Christians to do whatever the heck they want. And that is not true freedom of religion. That's what I believe.
Right, and even in the Philippine Constitution, kind of talking about how the state controls narratives, it's actually formally written into the Constitution that a family, it's called the Family Code, a family legally only can consist of a man and a woman when they're married, right? So that's kind of also one of the roadblocks to having a more secular system, is that to get the Constitution amended, it's very difficult. And that's the reason why I feel like a lot of people in the political space in the Philippines are advocating for civil unions. That way they don't have to jump through that loop of the Constitution. But, returning to your point about how it's not freedom of religion, it's so true. It's not. Because, I mean, really, like you were saying, there's a diversity of people. And when those groups are not recognized, right, or they're not considered, what does that say about the broader strategy and the broader governance of the government? And that's kind of the same thing that I feel like as a disabled person, that we're not considered at the small things. How are you supposed to consider us at the things that matter the most to us, like making sure that we can survive, making sure that we can work or do the things that we want to do? And if you can't even do that as people who are supposedly the most fit for the job, the most educated, right, working for the White House, then, oh my God, we have so much more to go. We have so much more things to work on and improve.
Well, I mean, the other thing that I kind of want to talk to you, ask you, but I'm not sure that how complicated, because I know it's very complicated, but I do know that there's the communists who are fighting in the Philippines, and ideas about that group is very controversial. So if you feel comfortable talking about this.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, because I'm not boots on the ground, and it's a difficult situation trying to get information in and out of
exactly. I try so hard to find information, but it's just so hard in Vietnam.
Yeah, and so I mean, what I can say from what I do know is that the government and the military are making extreme strides to combat them, and really, I think they're not addressing what really they want, and addressing that we don't need violence. If the government and the administrators really cared about let's end conflict, let's be a better country, let's work together, then they wouldn't be as hostile as they are, right? The military wouldn't be making encroachments and movements, and really like kind of what it's kind of a reflection of the strategy that the West has been using in Asia for a long time, where let's militarize everything, right? And I think, what it starts with is communication and diplomacy, because if all they're interested in is fighting, then the fighting will never stop, right?
Exactly.
And we have to meet somewhere in terms of, hey, okay, these are the things that the people are struggling for. This is why they're fighting. Let's try to fix it on that end, right? The root causes end. We cannot just, okay, well, they have guns, well, we'll have guns too, right? It has to be like, let's actually sit down and have a conversation like adults, right?
I don't know, man. I try so hard to learn about the Philippines in Vietnamese news, but it's just so hard because our style of reporting news is very neutral, and we just reported what actually happened. There's no comment or really no propaganda, nearly virtually no propaganda behind it. It's just the report what happened. So, and barely any news about that, just what he saw. I mean, mostly Reuters, Washington Post talk about that, and it's very biased, I gotta say.
Mhm.
Oh, by the way, we just got raided. Welcome, raiders. Hi, everybody. Just so you know, I am Luna, a Vietnamese communist born and living in Vietnam. I have my channel Luna ơi. And we are in my Mooncast, and we are interviewing our Filipino comrade Karl right here, and we are talking about the election in Philippines, what's going on in the Philippines, and the movement over there, and the living condition and the healthcare system in the Philippines. And we also just compare to Brazilian comrades too, because the election is also coming, and the fight between Bolsonaro and Lula and many other candidates too. The situation is very complicated, and well, it's rough, comrades. It's really rough, and hopefully through this interview we would know a little bit better about the Philippines and how the country is functioning right now. Oh, can I ask you a little bit, because we
Yes.
talk about the martial law curfew era. Is it still happening, or it ended already?
So I mean, yeah, in terms of when we're talking about the Marcoses, so yeah, like martial law, that's over. But I mean, in the sense of like maybe like the COVID restrictions and like how Duterte threatened to use the police force and the military to contain COVID, quote unquote. I guess there's maybe have been a slowdown, but maybe not necessarily a full cessation, just because of how the Philippines it's moving really slowly in terms of the progress that needs to be made, right? And honestly, it's very infuriating because of like vaccine imperialism. If the Philippines could produce its own vaccine instead of waiting for it to be made, brought over, and us have to look money to get it, right? It'd make the process much more easier, and it probably may have contributed to that maybe not being on the table because other solutions may have been easier. But that's kind of the general situation with that. But the police force and in general the military in general, they still hold a really strong hold against kind of anyone who counters the government in that sense, whether that them being trying to stand up for their ancestral domain to their indigenous lands, to for their political ideologies and their stances towards the government. And really, it's really saddening to see that because we were just talking about journalism and reporting, that those professions are under attack, right? And the police have been used against journalists, right? There's the owner of Rappler, which is a Philippine news source. She's been actually arrested multiple times. She's had multiple cases filed against her for quote unquote libel, for cyber libel, and they actually passed. And that's part of a law that they passed, that you can actually be imprisoned for talking about certain things, for mentioning certain things, and for communicating certain things, right? And it's kind of one of the things that came in the late 2010s with it's called the anti-terror law. And basically, what they label as quote unquote terror are things that aren't really that related to that. Just be okay. Well, can we advocate for a better society? Can we advocate for better policies? And because that technically counters the narrative that the Philippine government wants, that can fall under the anti-terror law, and you can be imprisoned, especially if you're an organizer or somebody who does works in those fields.
Yeah. Okay, well, the chat has a lot of questions for you. Now let's start. Well, get ready for it. Before that, I want to show this comment from the person named Chairman. United Nations is also silent about indigenous Lumat killings and evictions from their ancestral domains for mining corporations, and the eviction of peasants from their lands for the villas real estate.
Yeah, that's correct. It's also happening with water resources, because of course, for you to be able to survive as an indigenous person, I mean, in general, you need water, and many of the water rights are being taken away from many indigenous people because they need it for whatever they're doing in terms of manufacturing, for extraction or mining, or just the fact that those areas, the water, it gets toxic, right? They're using it for heavy industry, and ultimately, what would really solve that is if the Philippine government would and really Philippine society would stop looking towards the West to do things that they're obviously not going to do, and going to do the opposite that would actually hurt them, that would not benefit them in any way, right? And it's veiled sometimes as a way to help Filipino people, because, for example, there was a big typhoon earlier at the end of 2021 called Typhoon Rai internationally, and one of the things that the Philippine government did was to restart open pit mining operations in order as a way to fund the Philippines' recovery effort from the typhoon. But really, should we have done that? Probably not. And the consequences of that on the environment, on the Filipino people, if there's a better way to do it, it would be to, of course, for other countries to assist the Philippines. But obviously, and even the big United States, right? The awesome United States, what did they do in that situation? Did they offer, oh no, don't start open pit mining again, we'll help you out? That never happened, right? They may have given something, but it obviously wasn't enough.
I mean, like that's a while ago, there was a tornado in the US that destroyed the whole town. Like the US didn't even do anything, like build like virtually like to actually help people. It's did the Philippines just copy what the US been doing, and that's why both of you so bad at it.
Right. It's
sorry,
inherited.
but...
I mean, honestly, yeah. I mean, it's because of the Americans. It's inherited incompetence, and not because it's the Filipino people's fault. It's because the Western and the American influence on the Philippines created those conditions and created the kind of like control of the ideas over the society that made it so that it was really hard to get rid of them and to really do what's best for Filipino people. I mean, ultimately, that's what we want. It's not that we want, all of the fancy gold things in life, but that we want to be able to, at least for now, exist and live in a way that we are self-sufficient, that we're able to,
exactly.
Provide for our people.
Exactly, that is it. When Chairman has another comment saying,
sure,
the Philippine puppet regime is not willing to end the basic problems of the Filipino people, like imperialism, feudalism, and bureaucratic
capitalism.
Yeah. So I couldn't read this word.
But
wait a minute. Do you still have a feudalism in the Philippines?
Yeah, and I think, of course, that comes from Joma Sison, who's the author of Philippine Society and Revolution. And it's so true because, I mean, there's so much, like I was saying, control by elements and groups that are even kind of just separate from the state, right? And the way that they do it is by, crossing over into those fields. Majority of the presidents of the Philippines have come from a political or wealthy dynasty, right? For example, the Aquinos, Benigno Aquino, who was the president of the Philippines before Duterte, Cory Aquino, he's related to, and then by extension, they're related to a clan called the Cojancos, and they own a bunch of land. They're some of the biggest landowners in the Philippines. Or Gloria Macapagal Arroyo is related to Diosdado Macapagal. Or that, for example, if God forbid that Marcos becomes president, then and even then the Marcoses have had so many members of their family be involved in government, from being governors of regions to being representatives in government, and they use that in order to kind of shape the world that they want, right? Not the world that the Filipino people want, right? Through either their control of wealth or the use of the state to control wealth.
Okay. Oh, that's wow! I didn't know about that. I didn't know that there's still like kind of feudalism in the Philippines. It's so strange because Vietnam ended that in 1954 when we had land reform. So I talk about this a lot. My family, my grandpa, my grandma, on my mom's side, used to be landlord. They used to be the richest landlord in town. And that's sometimes like EJ usually make fun of me, saying like I should have been a princess or something like that, because like the richest landlord in town. But like by it's the 1950s when we did land reforms, and we just like everything got seized and redistributed to all the farmers in the village. And Yeah, it's just I mean like I agree with that. I mean, there's still lots of controversial things happen during that time, but generally speaking, I understand why Vietnam did that. Why Vietnam had to end the landlord caste and
Hmm.
the whole feudalist system, so we can give like free land and farm to every single Vietnamese. And I totally agree with that.
And that's honestly one of the biggest problems is that for many people, they will, never live in a place that they can really say that they were free of a landlord, and it's I mean, even for myself, and people say, "Oh, it gets better when you move to America," and no, it didn't.
No.
I've had a landlord for a majority of my life, right? And so
Dude,
that's good.
yeah, like you're talking. Are you saying moving from the country that still has the landlords who move the country that Bill Gates is the biggest landowner like over there? Like, like it's the same. I mean, it's
Mhm.
still.
It's really interesting. Like, I'll have people from the Philippines and my family. Like, oh, you have a house, right? Like, oh, I wish.
At least in Vietnam, I have a piece of farmland, 500 square meter, free
Mhm.
from the government. Like every single Vietnamese born in rural area can apply to that free piece of farmland. I'm owning it, and well, lots of people call me a petty bourgeois or like landlord because of that. It's ridiculous. It's just 500 square meter of rice farm.
Right,
I
and
will
it's not
never
like,
get rich. Yeah,
yeah, and
yeah,
it's not
yeah.
like you'd have more than anyone else, right? Because it's distributed, right?
Is it everyone in rural Vietnam? I mean, like can't have that. It means that every single one of us a landlord. What are you talking about?
Right. There, I
It's so
guess that
funny.
since it's distributed, like, how is that unfair, right? And that's kind of the
Yeah.
thing, is that the system in the Philippines right now is unfair. Like, there was like a massacre years ago when protesters were fighting for like land reform, and farmers were struggling, because that's the thing. The Philippines is one of the number one things that we do in the Philippines is agriculture, whether it be rice or fruits or anything like that. Our system is based on our ability to create food for us to live off of the land. And that's the problem that we face today, is that we can't effectively do that, right? There has been no major changes. And going back to the Americans, like, when the Americans took over from the Spanish, they promised that things would be different. Well, where was the land reform? There, it never happened, right? And if anything, what the Americans did with the land was, you know, create things in their image, quote unquote, to create
Yeah.
military bases, right? They didn't do anything for local Filipinos, for the people who were born there and their ancestors died there. They didn't do that.
Another question for you.
Uh huh.
It is from Garland. What does Karl think of Maria Ressa and the attention she receives in the West from the West from outlets like the BPS? Do you know
Yeah.
Maria Ressa?
Yeah, so that's who was talking about. She received many cases against her from the Duterte government for criticizing him. And the thing about her is that I think the important part is that uh, we still have to remember that someone like her, I mean, she's actually on a podcast, Talk to Hillary Clinton. So I mean, I'm not saying that Maria Ressa or that Rappler as a news organization is perfect, right? But they're a whole hell of a lot more trustable than other publications, like I said, who um, are owned by Duterte allies or something like that. And
Mm.
it's always important to view everything with a grain of salt. But I think the reason why she gets so much attention is that um, she herself, is it's in a way to. I feel like in her vein is that it's the Filipino journalists, but they try to paint this thing that, like, the West is kind of like the standard for human rights, or the standard for um, journalists being protected and safe, right? But I mean, let's say that the Philippines was put into the same context and the same sort of situation for journalists. I mean, journalists in the United States and other Western countries, they're still under attack. It's just not as, open as outright as we're going to file a lawsuit against you. We're going to, send armed people to come after you, right? Just because that doesn't happen doesn't mean that, journalists or proper journalism is under attack in Western countries. And I think that's kind of like one of the things that, yes, it's great that Maria Ressa is trying to fight for press freedom and things like that, but it's also to remember to have a grain of salt about how it may be from like the left liberal kind of perspective than really like a truly like anti-capitalist perspective or something like that.
Totally understand that, because we have the same situation that in Vietnam, like lots of like there's a Vietnamese diaspora author. He receives a lot of like attention from the West for being like progressive, He's not really like reactionary or something, but he's still a goddamn liberal.
Mm-hmm.
He's still like accidentally or intentionally, who knows, spread like disinformation and misinformation about Vietnam. But people still claim him to be progressive, leftist, something like that, and like a voice that you must hear. Like, I guess it's the same situation, like that is why like I am very skeptical of any news that is being promoted by Western media outlet, because at some extent, those information, those people still benefit from that Western media like system like that. So I'm very skeptical. So I think that Maria Ressa kind of the same situation with that Vietnamese diaspora author that I don't want to name any names. I don't want to draw any more attention.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's kind of annoying, like Luna, you should check this person out. Like, I know, I did. They're not even that good, but okay, move on.
Yeah, I mean, what I'll say is that she's not perfect, but I suppose better than others, right? And that's kind of the thing about the Philippines and the state of affairs with journalism in general. That, I mean, recently, one of the bigger media, companies in the Philippines, ABS-CBN, they were actually taken off of the air because the Duterte government refused to let them renew their communications license. So, their channels, their radio stations, they weren't allowed to publicly broadcast legally. So now they do everything via internet. But that's like one of the things is that, whether or not ABS-CBN is great or that they're left-leaning or progressive or not, just the fact that I guess they're attacking media outlets that draws the ire of the West. But they don't really understand the situation that like, well, even still, like, yeah, you're right that they're attacking, journalists and people in media. However, the media isn't that great to begin with anyway, right? Because it's from the perspective of the capitalists. It's run, if in a way so that they can make money, right? It's not just to inform people so that we can have a good society, right? And actually, sorry, go ahead. Yeah. I'm sorry. I went to journalism. I was briefly in journalism school, and like one of the things that made me quit and made me stop was that this like constant Western or American meta narrative in the way that journalism is taught and explained. And like my professor was legitimately like a CIA bootlicker, Oh, wow. I'm funded by a certain national endowment. Okay, I'm going to skip on this class.
Well. They like lots of people do not know how deep rooted, the propaganda from imperial core that they like actually they're working for. I like in my last like MOONCAST or something, or the MOONCAST before that, I talk about I watched a video where an ex-CIA agent literally confessed how CIA been controlling the media, controlling the narrative, controlling the information, and the main mission of CIA is to spread misinformation all around the world to maintain the status quo and like against communists all around the world, something like that. He said that, and he even admitted that like he would like just send like people to press, journalists all over the world to the press, or if they don't do that, they will also like influence all the real life connection to the journalists who work in those press. They will find a way to feed in misinformation to those journalists, so those press will like spread misinformation. It's incredible in a horrible way.
Right. Like they try to always constantly insert themselves. And it's kind of like the joke, right? If the CIA actually gives out the best awards in journalism, right? If you have the attention of the CIA, well, damn, you must be a good journalist, huh? Right? So, yeah, I totally see that. And that's kind of also the way that maybe not in the sense that they sometimes do misinformation about the Philippines, but maybe also that they put things into focus that sometimes shouldn't be, or that just in general, a lot of media organizations overlook things that happen in countries like the Philippines or in other global South countries, because they know that if that story kind of blows up or people read up about it, it may make people think about the situation back home where they are at.
Okay. Here, another question from
Sure.
Exequiel. What are the areas in the Philippines in which the Communist Party has more control over?
Okay, so in areas in the Philippines that they would have more control over, it would definitely be areas in the center of the country and in the south, because those areas have a lot better geography, right? That's suited towards fighting, right? So I just think that in areas like that, it's also more rural, and those are the groups and people that are hit hardest by the failures of the Philippine government and Philippine society, because everybody matters in the Philippines, right? But there's kind of like this centrality on things that happen in major urban centers, that happen in centers of wealth, right? So things that you hear about in the West, there's this perception that everything about the Philippines that you hear is Tagalog, which is a broader group of ethnic groups from the northern part of the Philippines, right? And so in areas where people feel not represented, that feel unrecognized, that have their humanity taken away from them, or have their humanity chipped away at, those would be the areas. Because I mean, how often do you hear about areas like that? I mean, as a Filipino American, I didn't know a lot of these things until I had to research it for doing my peace studies degree, because I really wanted to do something and learn about where I'm from and who I am. And that's the thing, is that it's so rare, because like we said, the narratives and the things that go on in our society are not geared for us to learn about those things and to center ourselves on where we're from, how we are indigenous, and how being indigenous functions, and what life like is for indigenous people. That maybe as a Filipino person who lives now in another country, that I actually don't know too much. And it's hard for people to admit that, because people, again, monolithize being Filipino, monolithize being part of the Filipino diaspora.
Same in Vietnam, we have 54 ethnic minorities with like different like languages and different cultures. But literally, I saw Westerners literally told my face like, well, 99% of Vietnamese are Vietnamese, so of course it's easier to to control Vietnam, not like the U.S. We have like black people, indigenous people, like all kind of white people like that. Like, dude, what are you talking about? We have 54 ethnic minorities here in Vietnam. What are you talking about? This is really racist and ignorant perspective to talk about.
Right, and that's why. Yeah, and I think that's the strength of knowing where you're from and who you are, because it gives you a lens, in the fact that indigenous people, if you learn about them in the Philippines, right, then they get you question, who else are indigenous? What other countries have indigenous people? And that really hurt me when I studied at Japanese college, because many of the Japanese people, that it's also part of this pervasive myth that Japan is homogenous, right? And I was like, well, what about what indigenous people exist here in the sphere of influence of Japan, right? So there's the Ryukyus, or the Luchu Okinawan people, right? Or there's the Ainu in the north part of Japan. And it's kind of like a lot of those people are erased. I've read, I have personal connections from people of those communities, and I've read a few books. And thank God they're accessible, which is a good thing. Big text is important for visually impaired or blind people. But yeah, it's really sad that those things are happening and that the information isn't spread. But when you take a self-interest in who you are as an indigenous person from your country, it opens the doors for you to say, who are our comrades, who are our brothers and sisters in their indigeneity, and what are their stories, and what can we learn, and how can we help each other.
Yeah, exactly. It's that is why we're here on the social media to fight against a false narrative that raises like understanding of our culture and our people. Talking a little bit, this is a comment. Talking about a little bit back how the U.S. treated the people in areas with like natural disaster like that. Like you remember when the tornado happened and Amazon
The
forced
workers.
Amazon warehouse workers to stay during the storm, and 6 people died. Right? It's how capitalism works. People, they don't see us as human beings.
Right.
We just see they just see us as like a sack of flesh that can make profit for them. And once that is why disabled people being treated horribly under capitalism is because they think that you are not that valuable, quote unquote, in the eyes of capitalists. That is why I'm trying so hard, and our comrade Karl here is trying so hard to raise awareness and to fight for the rights of disabled people. But it is very sad and inhumane and very genocidal view of human beings, especially toward disabled people.
Right. And the thing is that as a disabled person, I mean, the way that they look at you is that you're less exploitable. Like they can't work you as hard. They think that you can't be as productive, right? But I mean, what does that have to do with your humanity and being a person and being able to live and survive, right? And another part of this too is that being disabled, it kind of lets you see how capitalists are ready, willing, and able to sacrifice lives like the ones of the workers in Amazon, or the lives of Filipino people who slave away working for really low prices, making things and consumer products and goods for countries in the West, right? Do the people who kind of make these and uphold these systems in the West, do they really care about Manang Noring in the factory making their T-shirt, or putting together their piece of electronics? I don't know. It's debatable. I don't think so, right? And being disabled lets you see that very early on, right? Because since day one of my life, I felt like I've been in between in a way that it doesn't work, right? But obviously, it's like just because I can't work in the same way as other people and stuff like that, like the connection to what capitalists want, right? It's radicalization through experience. Really, it's what it is, being disabled, and it's ultimately not up to us to define our humanity. We are human, no matter what, right?
They do not care, and it's painfully obvious. Yes, Kronos started that. Yes, it's true. It's just so. There are wildfires going on in Arizona right now, and the national government basically gives zero fucks.
I mean, even here in where I live now in the Imperial Core in Hawaii, like, I mean, there was talks about them increasing the minimum wage, but it's like, okay, well, what's the increase going to look like? $12 in a state where buying a gallon of milk is like almost $5, buying a box of cereal is almost $7, and our previous minimum wage was $10. Like, how, right? How is this supposed to work in terms of us being able to live our lives? And especially as disabled people, we can't work. So if everything is already going to be difficult as it is under capitalism, and then you add that element, can we really say that the system is actually working?
Yeah.
Right?
I know an indigenous comrade living in Hawaii, Hawaiian indigenous comrade. His name is Silver Spook. Do you know about him?
Yes, I do. I actually, that's actually one of the reasons why I found out about your channel. I was trying to find out about the struggles of the native Kanaka Maoli here in Hawaii, and it's just kind of really empowering to know that, like I said, as a Filipino, I learned about my roots as an indigenous person, where I'm from, and who my ancestors might be, right? And I want to support anyone in their journey to do that, and to stand up for their rights to their ancestral domain, to their land, right? And I think there's a misconception for some people that when Filipinos come, that we have a choice. Many of us don't have a choice. Many of us are forced out of our country. There's a literal department in our federal Philippine government that's dedicated to sending Filipinos abroad to go work, because it's a major part of our economy, because we just can't, under capitalism and the way that they're controlling us, and the capitalism working in the Philippines, we can't generate enough for ourselves, and a lot of us have to leave. And people paint it as like, oh, we have a choice, and it's like, well, did my parents have a choice when the fact that because I'm disabled, they had to bring me here, because being disabled in the Philippines would be nearly impossible? I don't know. I feel like that's really forced, right? And the situation is the same for many others, and that ultimately, when we fight for our self-determination and rights for everyone, it will lead back to us to be able to go back to where we were from, to go back and enjoy our ancestral domain, enjoy our sovereignty over our own places.
It's just a long way to go, That's another question for you, Karl.
Mm-hmm.
Can you recommend any good source for learning about the Philippines?
Oh, I mean, well, a great source, honestly, would be a good place to start would be Philippine Society and Revolution. It's by Joe Masison, founder of the Communist Party of the Philippines, and to honestly talk to communities. Because here's the thing about learning about Filipinos is that we're in a unique position where many of us do not live in the Philippines, and that you can find Filipinos in places you never thought you would have found us, because we're always looking for work. And there's also another great text, the stories of Carlos Bulosan, by Edward San Juan. It's a great book, and it talks about the experiences of having to go away, right, and the experience that I was just talking about. And he has a quote in the book that says, where the work is great and my family gets to eat, that's where Filipinos will be, and that's where I will be as a Filipino person. And so that's honestly a really good thing, is to seek out and listen to our voices, because I feel like, again, what happens in a lot of Western media and the narratives that exist is that it's from the Western view. But in order for you to really understand how Filipino people are and what really happened in their lives, you have to listen to them. You have to let them open up about their experiences, and obviously not everyone will have the most information or the broadest perspective, but it would be awesome just to get those small things and to build them up and bring them together. And so some really other good reading sources would be a book about Pinay Guerrerias, published by the Bulacan Center for Filipino Studies. It's a really good book. They talk about everyone from guerrillas in World War II that were part of the socialist movement, like the Hukbalahap, all the way to people who collaborated with Americans, and it shows the radical difference in terms of like what I guess resisting imperialism means, right? Because we can do it the right way, or we can do it a way that will effectively just slow things down, right?
Yeah. And Kailao said that I would also like to recommend the Conjugal Dictatorship by Primitivo Miseres, and the Miseducation of the Filipino by Retano Constantino. You know about this book?
Yes, and actually, Carlo Camo actually has commented on some of my videos. So yes, I've heard of them, and that's the thing, is that a lot of us on our journeys, especially people who are living in the diaspora, because we don't have access to our forefathers. We don't have access to people who came before us, right? And so all of the things that we have to do to learn about the Philippines, we have to jump through hoops. And any text that can be provided is honestly great, because, or even just another thing is that we have a big problem in the community of our older folks, right? Not wanting to talk about the struggles that they went through because it's so painful, right? And just the mere fact that happens is a big tell about what has happened, the conditions that existed in the Philippines before us. And I encourage anyone who may know somebody who is a Filipino elder, they're a great source, because our elders, you know, they've lived through imperialism firsthand. One of my elders, they survived World War II. They were born as a child into war, right? They've ran through the woods because of explosions and gunfire, and they've eaten salt and rice because that's the only thing they could have eaten, right? And they have those firsthand experiences, and they're still alive. Many of them are still alive, like I said. So seek those people out, and they're in your communities. You just have to do a little bit of looking.
Yeah. Ryan just shout out in the chat. Luna ơi, okay, hi, hello. There's a comment from a Black person, and I really want to read this. Here, as a Black person with mixed ancestry, I know I have some indigenous American ancestry, but I don't feel comfortable claiming that ancestry. On top of that, I don't know my African roots exactly. This is a thing that I see. It's like it is a big problem in especially the imperial core, because my partner EJ, he has a root of like Irish and a little bit of German, but he has no really true like real connection with that. And he told me that he doesn't feel like he has any culture that he can attach to it. It's like the emptiness beside within him, and I think that there's also a lot of problem with lots of people, because they got robbed from their own identity, and living in the imperial core, all of that culture got erased, and they are like they not encouraged go and seek for their true roots, and it's really painful. I gotta say it's really painful. I'm Vietnamese one and living in Vietnam, and I'm proud of our culture and our history, and that is something that fulfills my heart a lot when I encounter all the attacks and harassment that I have. But yeah, what do you think about this, Karl?
You're very right. I mean, being connected to who you are and your ancestors, it should make you feel empowered. It should make you feel strong. My personal story is this, right? I grew up part of my life as a member of the diaspora, and so I had little connection to being Filipino. And what that meant, and what led me on my journey to become, somebody who studied at a Japanese college, was because I was like, well, I don't really understand being Filipino. I'm going to latch on to this other culture that I have exposure to, Japanese culture, anime, things like that, right? And that's a lot of the way that many Filipinos feel, because they don't feel like they understand their parents. And that comes from partially what I mentioned earlier, that a lot of the elders don't want to speak about what happened to them because it's so traumatic, it's so heavy, it's so painful, that they'd rather not their child have to, bear that. But we do. That's our history, right? And in order for us to make a change, in order for us to do better, we have to know our history. And that's kind of one of my ambitions, was to really learn our language, and to expand, not only just to learn Tagalog, but to try to look into learning other indigenous languages, and to learn about not only the things that we understand as mainstream, but the things that have to be understood from the really looked at it from the perspective of as the cultural perspective of something not Western, something not imperialist. And I think for many Filipinos in the diaspora, that's their struggle, and that's why many of them. I don't know if this is a thing also for Vietnamese folks, but many of us also hate ourselves, right? We hate being Filipino, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's so sad.
It's
really sad. What do you think about that, as far as how do Vietnamese people feel about that, and why do you think that happens as well?
Oh yeah, as I talked to many Vietnamese diaspora, and it is really heartbreaking, because lots of them, because they were born in the imperial core, and their families still hold a very fascistic, anti-communist, reactionary perspective toward their own people. Like they hate Vietnam, and dictatorship, horrible communists, just no freedom whatsoever. So they grew up receiving all of that, and they were taught to uphold white culture. They were taught to uphold America, the true values of their people, and then they hate their own people. But when they go to schools or go to society or their working place, they're being mistreated horribly because of racism over there. Because no matter what, they still don't look white. That is why they got treated
Mm-hmm.
so badly. So like this constant conflict between them, like they were taught to hate their own people, but they are not being loved by the society that they're living in, imperial core. So like they constantly just receive like hatred from all sides. And that is why like my dream is that I can help
Mm-hmm.
those Vietnamese people if they want to find a connection. You want to find a place or somebody that they can talk about it and start like, to love themselves again, love their own culture, and like learn true information about their own motherland. I'm very happy to help. And that is why I always encourage people, like, if you have a chance, just go back to Vietnam and see everything by your own eyes. And that is a way to like to fight against the misinformation about it. But I have another question for you too. Like,
Mm-hmm.
have you been back to the Philippines yet?
I mean, just because of the issues that we're having with the coronavirus, of course, and the fact that I'm disabled, I don't feel safe in the Philippines, and that's kind of
It's
how
very
a lot of
sad.
people feel. Yeah, and that's the thing is like I've been there before, right? And I've lived there for a little bit, and to really get connected with the land, it's a really different feeling, and to see with your own eyes, well, my low vision eyes, right, and to hear the things uh, that go on and things and all of those real life, hard, tangible evidence, right? It's so irrefutable. But and
Yeah,
that's the thing is that many of our histories, because of the way that we center it, so oral tradition, right?
yeah,
It's devalued in the West because you're like, well, how can you prove it? And I'm like, well, they lived it, man. What else am I supposed to tell you? That was their life experience. They
yeah,
took their own 2 feet and stepped into the mud, right?
yeah,
How can you tell me that somehow is disqualified, right?
yeah. I mean, I don't know. And the thing is that like the imperial core always keep people, the diaspora like you, always keep you so poor that
Mm-hmm.
you can't even afford to go out, to go back to your home country. It's like it's another just inhuman fact.
That's very true, and the same applies for me as well. You know, it's no secret that I as a disabled person, in the Imperial Corps in the West, for example, um, the vast majority of us do not have employment, right?
Yeah,
And if you're an indigenous or somebody from a cultural minority in the Imperial Corps, and then you don't have access to wealth, and it's our culture and who you are, the very blood that runs through your veins is being gate kept from you with money, right? You need money to know about yourself. When really, like many of that in our cultures, those things were free, right? Oral tradition. You could just ask someone, "Hey, can you tell me a story? Do you know about this god? Do you know about this ancestor? Why do we do this thing? Why do we have this culture practice? Why do we eat that?" Right? But information is now put behind a paywall. Who we are is put behind a paywall, and that's kind of like you said earlier. Um, One of the main reasons that guides me to talk about the things that I do, because that's why I like YouTube, because in a kind of general sense, maybe not 100% accurately, but YouTube is relatively free in the sense that you can
yeah,
watch, if you have the technology, you can watch the content for free. You don't have to pay for it like a streaming service, right?
yeah.
But then again, it's that's another hurdle, and that's one of the roadblocks to learning about yourself. If you don't have the technology, then what, right?
Exactly. uh, I mean, um, Zara said they want us permanently tied to the land so they can extort us for rent, other resources,
Hmm.
hospital bills, taxes, and etc.
They want the money. That's really all it is about. And um, I heard this from University of the Philippines professor on Al Jazeera a couple of years ago, and they were talking about the impeachment of a former president, Joseph Estrada, and it's like what are the three things on Filipino people's minds, right? It's, job security and income, and the fact that they can provide for their family. Family orientation is a big thing in the Philippines. Well,
Yeah.
if those are the three things that people are worried about, okay, well, money and the capitalist system, that's not innately Filipino. That's not innately indigenous. And it's not center of mind for many Filipino people that, well, one thing that we should center our lives on is our culture. One thing that we could center our life around is um, our traditions and our language and mythology. It's not front of mind for us, and it's same is true for a lot of other groups. What center of mind is just trying to stay alive as opposed to really caring about who we are.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I'm gonna have like a very last question for you.
Sure.
Very interesting. I also want to know
Mm.
about this. Can you want to share any Filipino cultures that you want us to know about, learn about, like food, music, or even memes?
If there's anything, I guess, this is a really good one because I do love memes. I'm a meme enjoyer, as they say. But I think, okay, one thing that I will say that I want people to know is that many of the things that you see in the West or in the imperial core as labeled as Filipino, there is either some sort of Spanish, American heritage to that, or that it's Tagalog centric, which means that it's from the northern part of the Philippines, and that we have to acknowledge that there's not a monolith in Philippine, food, music, ritual, culture, and that there's so much diversity. I mean, everybody will talk about, if you watch anything about the Philippines, they'll say like there's 6,000, 7,000 islands or something like that. That's very true, but we also have to acknowledge, okay, but there's also thousands and hundreds of different groups of people who live on those islands, right? And that if there's any kind of thing that I can introduce you to, it would definitely be to indigenous music. So there's actually, oh my gosh, I have to look up the spelling here. That way it would be accessible for everyone to look up here. But one piece of music that really inspired me and really like helped guide me, especially I worked on a project about an indigenous story from the island of Mindanao. It's called Agu. It's an epic story. It's sort of, it's like a folk tale. It's on my channel, but one of the things that really guided me and really inspired me to continue working on it was finding the indigenous music of Mindanao, and the instrument is called the faglong, and it's kind of like this long guitar looking thing. It's a string instrument and it looks sort of like a lute, but it's very skinny. And when I was listening to it, I really felt like I could do anything. And if you just listen to it, there's no words, it's just instrument, it's just a guitar and things like that, but it's so rhythmic, and it really feels like, it's like our heartbeat, right? And I think that's something that you should definitely check out. And I'll also write it out here in the chat. And a good video to watch. I use the song from Jesse Gone. See if I can. Oh, okay, yeah. I'll just put it. Is it okay if I put it in the private chat? That's what I guess a piece of music or something like that, a musical instrument that I'd like to share. Oh, am I frozen? I'm not hearing anything in return. Is my audio dead?
Yeah. Actually,
there you
I'm muted.
Oh, okay. I was like,
Sorry.
oh my gosh. I thought I was.
Hi, Paul. Sorry.
No worries.
Okay, so I just sent the name of the instrument in the chat. Thank you so much. We have about 5 minutes left in the interview. Do you have any final message you want to say to the audience?
As a final message, I mean, I myself am on my journey about learning, and I think the number one thing that you should always do is try to learn and educate yourself. And whenever you learn something, to pass those things on to other people, because ultimately, because the way that the media narratives work, we need to work extra hard by spreading things through word of mouth and through doing what we can. And and especially we need people to see that what we're doing is in the interest of bettering humanity, bettering ourselves, and helping people stay alive, helping people do what they want to do. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I love working with Laban Magazine so much, is that we do everything that we can and amplify voices and messages as much as we can that promote things like the human rights of Filipinos and America's involvement in not upholding them. And if you live in the imperial core in the United States of America, the so-called United States of America, please, please, please sign petitions and organize to get the Philippine Human Rights Act. It's a act of law in Congress, in the House of Representatives and Senate, that is trying to stop arms sales to the Philippines, to the Duterte government, and to the potential future government of the Philippines to use against their wars and their attacks against journalists and indigenous people, organizers, and our fellow comrades and everyday working class people and people who struggle with public health things like addiction.
Yeah.
Please, please, please try to support us. Sign when you can, protest when you can, participate in phone zaps if you can, if that's what the local organization in your guys' area is promoting. And yeah, just always support human rights, and remember that part of human rights and global citizenship is disabled people. We are part of that group, and we will do what we can to stand by and help you just as much as you guys do for us.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it's really great to have a chance to talk to you, And I hope that in the future, you can come back to my show and we'll have more of a conversation about Philippines and disabled people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you so much for for talking to me and to chat to the audience, and thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much, guys.
Bye. Okay, everybody, I have an announcement for you. You know that I also started the live streaming on my new channel Luna Ơi Live, and now I'm gonna announce that we're gonna be running for the next 30 minutes streaming the after party, but only on Luna Live. I will give you one more chance to go there and have fun together. It is 30 minutes long after party stream that only happen on this channel. The link is in the chat, Luna Ơi Live. So if you want to have fun, if you want to know what's gonna happen in that party, let's go. Actually, I don't even know how to end the. EJ is here.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Karl. I hope I get to talk to Karl. We need to have Karl on the dialectic soon.
Yeah, right.
I was watching offline, but okay. So yeah. So here's how we're gonna do this. If you're watching on.
Oh, Anonymous donated $5 just 1 minute ago. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Anonymous. Okay, if you're watching on Twitch, we're gonna raid, I guess, and we'll just say goodbye to y'all. You can always come over to YouTube and watch us. And if you're watching on YouTube, we're gonna end it right now. So you have the link. You can come over to Luna Ơi Live and hang out with us there for 30 minutes. Please subscribe because the live streams are leaving youtube.com/LunaOy.
Yes.
So it'll be a few weeks, but we're transitioning out. So anyway, thank you for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, youtube.com/LunaOy. We're ending that stream right now. Goodbye, youtube.com/LunaOy. And if you're watching on Twitch, thank you for watching. We're going to be rating now. If I can figure this out.
One. That.
Okay.
And then go to raid.
Okay, got it. Oh, and there's nobody to raid. Well, okay then. I guess we're not raiding. There's nobody streaming right now. So goodbye, Twitch people. We're gonna say goodbye to you now. And now it's only us. Only us on Luna Ơi Live. If you're with us still, the 31 people still watching, then you did the right thing.
What are you gonna do here?
You are the cool folks who support Luna's endeavors. Now, I don't know what to say now. You take over, Luna.
Actually, what are you gonna do?
Luna's like super relaxed.
I'm just so relaxed. Come on, just have fun. It's just like, what's going on in your, area?
Yeah, what's happening in the world?
What's going on?
I'm working on a script right now.
Oh, really?
I'm about to record
About
it
what?
this afternoon, I hope. It's
Mhm.
about Elon Musk's purchase of $44 billion of Twitter shares.
Mhm.
And
Let me show
people might be surprised by that.
you.
Did you know we had a secret door into
Like
another
space.
dimension?
Another dimension. You know, just open the
I
door.
built that a couple days ago.
See? I just want to like tell you a little bit about my idea for my future Mooncast. Just this kind of
Lixa means history.
history. I'm gonna from a different dimension. I just took some of
There's
my
poor Necky Bird's taking a nap in there.
making me out
You can see it.
his butt.
Don't bother Necky Bird. He's taking a nap, and we don't want to deal with Necky Bird right now.
I mean, the interdimensional door, exactly. This is our textbook, history textbook.
Mhm.
And anytime I'm in my future Mooncast, I will just literally like, just tell you how we study history in Vietnam, especially history. We have a whole chapter about America. So are you interested in learning about how Vietnamese been teaching about your own country? We also
Damn.
have about the Latin America and Africa, European country too, you know, very interesting.
These are so interesting.
Yeah. And this is a book about, this is for 11 class, 11th grade students, like 16-year-old. And this is book advocated for just farming. And I do think this is going to be so useful, especially in my dream, you know, become a professor gardener or something like that. They will teach you about mostly every basic stuff about gardening, how to grow rice and how to turn a branch into a tree and how to, like, you know, grow the seeds, something like that. It's amazing. And this is for high school students in Vietnam to study how to be a farmer. Yeah. You know about the stuff. So this is our literature. I was student like specialized in literature, so I'm very excited for this.
Is that in
Right.
Vietnam?
This isn't it? I don't think so. No, it's not.
Wait, no. Is that not the bridge that's between Hue and Da Nang?
No, isn't it?
I think it might be, dude. It looks like it.
It's too beautiful to be true, you know.
No, we've driven over this bridge.
It
It is. Look, there's the mountains.
I'm
You
not
don't
sure
know.
about that. I'm checking the chat right now.
What's the chat not gonna know about that? They don't even see the bridge.
Oh no, I'm just checking the chat to see what you're talking about.
What are you talking about, chat?
Thinking about frying some nuggets, actually.
Who, you or them?
Satu Zio.
They look like
Zero.
Kyle Katarn. Who's Kyle Katarn? Why is that name familiar? Is that a Star Wars person?
Kaya Katarn.
Google that. Is that like is that from a Star Wars video game?
Kartan.
Oh my god, why do I know that?
This dude, you do with a new haircut.
Wait
you know?
a minute. What? I can't believe
Wait a
I knew
minute.
that. Wait.
The first picture.
He is
It's
from the-
you. It's literally you. The first picture.
Why did I know that this was a Star Wars character from a video from the Jedi Knight games? I'm such a nerd.
What's
That's
the best
amazing.
Vietnamese and Chinese soap operas? You asked the right person.
Oh my god.
I watched a lot of soap operas, you know. Let me think. Shut up.
I
No
was
way.
in a Vietnamese soap opera that's just
Oh,
about to be released.
Can you believe it? Can you believe it? I just found out about that.
I was in this movie. I'm just an extra in this one, but like we filmed it in 2014 and I was an extra in the background and it's
Mm.
apparently just about to get released.
And it's so funny that I didn't even know. I just talked to EJ about that.
Luna was
It
like, "Hey, did you know that there's this TV show coming out about this like French guy and he's like the son of an evil plantation owner and he
And
tries to
he'll-
help the Vietnamese people or something?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm in that."
I was like, what the fuck?
I play an evil French guard. No lines. I'm just in the background, but
So funny. Is it so funny that what kind of like what do you call it, co-voice in it? That you just talk to your partner, like, I just heard about a new Vietnamese soap opera project. You know about that? Like, I was in it. What the fuck?
I've been done had an IMDb page though. I have a few things. But the thing is, it's like it's all screwed up because there's so many Aaron Johnsons out there. But like, I think there's like 2 or 3 pages, and some of my stuff is on the wrong page. It's like on some other Aaron Johnson's page. But like, yeah, because I was location assistant for what the fuck? Death Sentence starring Kevin Bacon, which was terrible. Don't watch it. It's not worth it. Not worth your time. And I don't know. I worked on crew for a few other movies, but like none of them. I'm not proud of any of them, and I wasn't very high up in the hierarchy on any of them. But yeah, I do have a IMDb page somewhere out there. I haven't looked at it in like a decade. Chinese soap operas.
I watched so many Chinese soap operas.
Name one.
One of the very famous one. It's a 还珠格格. That's in Chinese. If you know Chinese, you will understand what I say. It's 还珠格格. And it was talking about the story of like under the Qing dynasty, you know, and talking about the story of a princess, a lost princess trying to get back to the royal family, to look for the royal family. So it's like a story like that, and then two girls got mixed up together, and they become princess. It's kind of funny, but it's so famous.
There's 2 princesses. What are we gonna do about this wacky situation? Yes, I am 0 degrees from Kevin Bacon. Luna doesn't know, but actually, probably most people who are like under 30 don't know about this. But there used to be this thing, the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. It was kind of like an early sort of meme, and the idea was Kevin Bacon's been in so many like movies that you could take any actor and within 6 degrees, 6 relationships through movies connect to Kevin Bacon. But I have a direct connection to Kevin Bacon. So technically, Luna is 1 degree away from Kevin Bacon. And like anyone we've ever had the dialect, most of like our fellow content creators are only 1 degree away from Kevin Bacon. What are you doing now? Doraemon? Why are you showing them my Vietnamese textbook?
This is Vietnamese textbook. Doraemon.
I'm gonna.
How many of you in the chat know about this? Actually, you read this when you were kids. I'm curious.
I look like Ian's high school math teacher. Apparently, I just got one of those faces. I'm just a white guy with a beard.
I want you to act like a math teacher.
White
Southern math teacher.
All right, y'all. Settle down. Settle down now. We got to get to work. Y'all take out your textbooks.
Here.
Go to page 37 now.
37.
Did y'all do your home? Who did your exercise?
I forgot.
Luna,
teacher.
Again.
Sorry, teacher.
All right. Well, I'll let you make it. I'm a nice math teacher. I'd be a math teacher. You can make it as long as I get it by the end of the day. I leave at 2:55 on the dot. So if you can get it to me by 2:55 on the dot,
okay,
I'll let you make it up. Don't write in my Doraemon book. Hey, don't even joke about writing in my.
Doraemon was kind of popular in Mexico. Oh, really?
Jace's Kitchen knows about Kevin's Bacon.
I'm so sick, and I know I'm so weird. You are very weird, Jace. Jace's Kitchen.
I used to have this one teacher, a substitute teacher. His name was Mr. Malcolm, and he would always come in and he'd write his name on the board, and he'd go, "My name's Mr. Malcolm, 1L no X."
Mr. Malcolm, 1L no X.
Because he was referring to Malcolm X.
Malcolm X.
It was a little, because he said it. I mean, like, this guy was a substitute teacher for like 8 years of my life. Because he was in middle school and high school. Oh, and he would, he said that at the beginning of every class he ever substituted. And at the end of every class he ever substituted, he'd go, "Have a good day. And if you drink, don't drive. And if you smoke, quit." I mean, it's not a bad message.
The best Vietnamese soap opera is, this is the top one in my heart that nothing can beat it yet. It is a soap opera story about, I show you in the chat. It's so good.
We're still talking about soap operas?
Yes.
Why?
Because I love it. I don't give a shit about what you think about it.
It looks like a war thing.
Yes. I would just talk about 1 minute, okay? Share screen.
I have a stopwatch on
Content.
my. What is this thing? Me Fit.
Oh, why do I can't? Oh, because
What are you doing?
I want to share the window.
Oh no, that's gonna be a nightmare
A nightmare, right?
because it's portrait.
Oh.
Luna.
Asa.
The
It is
two.
originated from a very famous novel of Vietnam, talking about Vietnam in the 80s and in the 90s. Right after, under the subsidizing model,
Song
you know.
Dai Song.
Yeah, it means like
life. Wait, let me try to translate it. What? Say it, because I don't know the tones.
Sống ở đáy sông.
Life here, living here.
Sống means a wave.
Oh, wave here, wave.
The wave in the bottom of the river. The wave in the bottom of the river.
I see.
Talking about society, Vietnamese society after the Vietnam War, the Vietnam War under the occupation, and how like a life of a young man got destroyed, something like that. It's so interesting. You learn a lot about how Vietnamese like lived in this time under the.
Có in some không?
No.
Oh, I asked if they have English subtitles. Yes, đúng rồi. Tôi đang phải học tiếng Việt. Nhưng bây giờ tôi không có. Oh shit. Oh, lấp. How do you say class?
Lớp.
Look at that, I said it right. Lấp.
Mm-hmm.
Vì hết rồi.
Học xong rồi, you can say học xong.
Học xong rồi.
So it means like he just said like he had to learn Vietnamese, but now he doesn't have any class.
Nhưng tôi muốn học nữa. Vì
And he wants to study more.
Vì càng ngày càng tôi quen rất nhiều từ Việt.
You should say tôi càng ngày càng
Tôi càng ngày càng quen
nhiều
từ tiếng Việt. I could just say từ Việt though, right? If I want to be a little bit more informal.
Weird. The Viet. Yeah.
I said over time
Good
I'm
job.
forgetting more
Good
English
job.
words.
As a Filipino, I can confirm so pork. My mom does watch a lot of Filipino
I think soap operas are big everywhere. But the thing about it is we all have our soap operas, don't we? I mean, I know who Kyle Katarn is, so who am I to make fun of people for watching soap operas, right? Soap operas are just, I mean, everyone has it. Look, my favorite show is 6 Feet Under. That was a soap opera. The Sopranos was a soap opera.
Yes.
Change my mind. Hashtag change my mind. See, Luna doesn't want me to learn Vietnamese. Luna actively discourages from me and tries to sabotage me.
About EJ without him understanding it.
Em rất sai.
He just said the line
so
wrong. Nope. I mean, I'm a big fan of wrestling. That's
pro wrestling is 100,000% soap opera. Oh my god, 1,000%. I really liked. I used to do production for. I was again very low on the hierarchy, but I did production for Mexican wrestling, Lucha Libre. It was so fun. Like it was like really fun. I didn't speak Spanish very well, so I didn't understand what there's like. I mean, I took Spanish in high school, but I don't really speak it at all, so I didn't really understand what they were saying. But like, it was so different than like it's so much more athletic. I think like they do the high flying stuff more. It was super cool. I really loved it. And they wear these they wear the masks. Do you know about Mexican wrestling, Lucha Libre?
Nope.
Oh, it's so different. Like it's so interesting. A lot of them wear masks. Oh, and they had an American. There was one guy I could understand. It was a U.S. American. What are you asking for? You're pointing at a pile of junk. It could be anything.
Cardboard.
You want the cardboard?
Yeah. Why do you have this number 7?
It's from when I made the prototype of this out of cardboard.
And he just said, asked me after party.
I was afraid you were going to forget.
I did forget.
I was going to tell you a funny story though.
Oh, keep
So
telling
Lucha Libre has this. Okay, I don't know what like league this was or whatever, but they had a character and it was an American guy, and he was the bad guy, and he was like a heel, and he was just like an asshole, and he was like, I don't know, it was like a chauvinist asshole white guy, and he got his ass kicked all the time, and it was really funny. I don't know, long time ago.
Lucha Libre is a Mexican software that is not so soft.
I agree. I always thought it should get, it would get, I don't know. I think
okay, we have about 15 minutes left. Just ask us questions, or else we're just gonna
or tell us what to talk about. I don't know.
Exactly, or we're just gonna just talk nonsense,
Oh yeah, you would love it.
American
I
the
think
bad
you would love
guy.
it. It's so good. I wish I could remember more. This was like 12 years ago, or it was a long time ago.
So funny.
But I can't remember the guy's name. He had a funny name. It was like Chad Elgington or something. It was like a super.
You know
white
about
guy
this?
Oh yeah, Lucha Libre stuff on. Yeah, we watched. Oh, we haven't watched those yet.
We haven't.
No.
I have no idea.
There's this one Lucha Libre guy who was, what was his name? Sanos or something? Sanos? I can't
Talking
remember.
about Brazilian soap operas, I do remember that in our cable TV channels, I did saw some episode of
Santo.
some Brazilian soap operas.
We will get to the Santo episodes one day.
Oh.
You've watched Brazilian soap operas? What's your favorite one?
Oh my god. It's just like I was a kid and then just like lurch around, look around, and didn't really like pay attention to any, but I saw it. You had it.
This is
and
Santo.
Filipino soap operas, for sure.
So Santo was a real person. It's been a long time since I read this, but apparently Santo was a real person, but he would like seriously wear this mask all the time. And like out in public and stuff. And I guess he would give money to, I don't know, or food to poor people or something. I don't remember exactly, but it's been a long time since I read about it. But they made these films, and Santo was like a superhero. And yeah, we will get to them eventually on Mystery Science.
Now, is there any Vietnamese wrestling martial arts that would be fun to learn about? Of course, we have a few. Like Vo Việt Nam.
Vo Việt Nam, that's right. Vo Việt Nam.
Vo Việt Nam is our very it originated from like the central south of Vietnam. Let me show you this. It's interesting. We have a very unique
Luna,
product.
stop doing it in your Luna Oi browser. Why do you keep doing this?
Oh shit. You do that for me.
My goodness gracious. All right. I'm just going to hide the Luna Oi one from you. Here, put this down here.
Yeah. Take it away from me. Okay. So that is a Vo Việt Nam. You should learn more about it.
It just looks like any other martial art, though. You can't really tell much from these images.
Exactly.
I mean, maybe that's not true. Maybe a martial arts expert could tell the difference. You can see there's a lot of leg stuff, right?
In those, like the eyes of the white dude like you, of course, you cannot tell the difference between kung fu's, but
don't they do a lot of leg stuff?
Yes, that's a good distinguished like characteristic of Vo Việt Nam. That like we mostly use legs. We like hands just for like balancing, and most of the main position are like legs, because we can see that the legs are longer and more stronger, more powerful than hands, and it is faster to kill somebody with it.
I have short legs though. Can I practice the art of Vo Việt Nam?
Still longer and stronger than your own arms. Still a better choice.
You haven't seen these pythons. Have you ever watched The Oblongs? Yes. But it was a long, long time. I think my brother watched it. I think I was like a little bit too old to be the target demographic, but my brother watched it and I would watch it with him sometime.
Oh, that's a Vietnamese movie that uses Vo Việt Nam that is really good, and I suggest you to watch it.
That's not what I'm thinking of. Wait, I did see this, but I don't remember it. Gosh, I barely remember this. I have to rewatch it to have any comment on it. It's been like literally 20 plus years since I've seen this.
I want to show you. Recommend you people to go watch this movie of Vietnam.
This is my most ADHD stream I think.
Exactly, I love it.
Luna's like, as soon as we start to get into a topic, Luna changes it immediately.
Exactly.
All right, what is this? What are we looking at now? This is a movie.
It's a movie that uses Vo Việt Nam.
Okay, so it's a Vo Việt Nam.
The Vo Việt Nam movie is just so good. They have English subtitles, so just go watch it. It means
wait, let me try to translate it.
Ooh, okay.
Dong means west. Dong. No, clothes. No? What does it mean?
You haven't started learning this word yet.
How do you know?
Zong is a
Oh,
counting
zong.
word.
I thought there was a dash. Okay. Zong mao. Color?
No, mao is color. Mao,
Oh.
uptone is blood.
What is zong?
Zong is a counting word for liquid.
Okay. So Einhung is probably a name, right? Einhung.
Einhong means hero. Hero.
Oh, hero's blood.
The hero's blood.
Okay.
Talking about,
Einhung means hero?
Einhong means hero.
Mm.
Einhong means both the hero and Mr. Hong.
That's what I was at. Yeah, that's why I was confused.
Exactly.
Is Hung a name in Vietnamese?
Hong is a name of Vietnamese.
So there are some people named Hung and it's like Einhung. Yeah, I can see that being it's a cool name.
Yeah, so go watch that movie. It's a good Vietnamese movie. Has an English subtitle talking about revolutionaries fighting against colonialist French using for Vietnam. It's amazing. Go watch it.
Wait, there's another question. I missed it. Do Vietnamese provinces and cities have flags or seals?
No, we don't.
That's a good question. I never thought about that.
We don't.
You have like symbols. Like the symbol of Thanh Hoa is the drum head and the bird.
We have a
but
symbol.
that's like ancient, right?
That's it. Mostly from Amsterdam. Symbol of Hanoi is the
Hanoi has a symbol.
Pavilion.
See, you are so dogmatically
but
opposed.
we don't have a flag.
I kind of want to
we
get a
don't
tattoo.
have a seal.
I want to get a tattoo of the Hanoi logo because it's the Temple of Literature, and I like that whole idea.
The Van Gogh Pavilion. It's a symbol of
Pavilion.
Intellectual, something like that. Give me that box up there. I want to announce a very interesting, awesome idea about next stream.
All right. Hold on. Wait a minute. I got to be careful here.
Autism acceptance month. Oh, really? Okay, good to know.
I accept you. All right.
Full screen then.
I might even be. I just did a podcast episode, and they asked me a little bit about my neurodivergence, and it's true that I might be autistic. I'm kind of hesitant to get diagnosed. But okay, what is this? What are we looking at here?
This is Vietnamese Legos. Made in Vietnam. This is so interesting. Then this is in my next stream, I'm gonna just like unbox this and put them together. And this is literally my childhood because my mom was a tailor in my village, and her tailor shop was like kind of this, and the style is like Vietnam in the 80s.
It's super cool. Actually, like this is there are still places like this today.
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm gonna adjust the focus so people can see better. Prepare yourselves for a little focus adjustment. There we go.
Ooh, so good. Okay.
So this is pretty cool. There really are. I mean, like when we went to Hanoi, there was a shop next to our hotel like that. It's quite cool. So like this is like classic Vietnam. I don't know if you can see, like there's the sewing machine. Like Luna's mom unironically still has that kind of sewing machine.
Yes, you saw it, right?
Yeah, and it's like the kind that used to have a foot treadle, but didn't your dad hook up like a motor to it or something?
Yes.
That's so interesting. So then on the back, you can see there. So anyway, this is kind of interesting little, I like this. It's kind
my
of
dream is that like over time, I would build like a whole, Lego road of the old Vietnam.
Right.
Under the subsidizing model. Like that's my dream.
Oh, there's a cat. But like, so what I like about this is it's encouraging kids to like kind of play with and be proud of their traditional local culture.
The old times, yeah.
You keep saying old times, but I swear to God, they still have shops like this in Vietnam. It's not that old. Like, seriously. In Hanoi, do you remember next to our hotel?
Will I have that tree in the...
No, I don't think it comes with the trees. Actually, I don't think it comes with the trees of the car or anything like that. It's just a shop. I might be wrong.
Shit.
But you can get that stuff at modeling shops.
So please subscribe to my channel. Please subscribe to my Luna Live channel if you want to watch me.
Yeah.
Playing this.
Because these kinds of streams are only going to go on Luna Oil Live. In fact, one of the advantages of having Luna Oil Live is it will allow Luna to do a lot of different kinds of streams and just have more fun with this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Because
Lego Nam.
There are some cool like knockoff Legos you can get for like I think they have one of the Imperial Palace in Hue and
all kinds of stuff.
I mean, these are a little bit pricey.
A little bit pricey, you gotta say.
But they're pretty cool.
They're extremely cool. I like them way more than the. I'm sorry, but the actual Lego because they just like too like modern, too westernized. You know, more just like robots and superheroes.
You obviously never play with the pirates or the knights or the. They even have ninjas now, apparently. Don't they? Ninja Go or something? Am I wrong? I got into animation with, dude. Okay, this is a fact. I would not be here today if it weren't for Legos and Mega Bloks because I had a lot of Mega Bloks because we didn't have a lot of money for the real Legos. But anyway, so I got into stop motion animation in like 1994, and it's because I watched The Nightmare Before Christmas. Okay, my mom came up to my room and was like, "You gotta watch this. They're making these puppets move around or something. I don't know." And I went and watched, and it was a thing on the news about how they made The Nightmare Before Christmas, and they showed the animators like they showed them, and I was like so young, I was like 10 years old, but they showed exactly how it worked. It was like you'd move it a little bit, take a picture, move it a little bit, take a picture, and I was like, I could do that because my parents had this shitty like little VHS camcorder, and so I got my Legos and I did it, and it worked, and I was just like, holy shit, I can make movies, and I made movies in my room for like years. I think my brother at one point recorded over all of them.
Wow. Do you still have the footage?
I just said I think my brother recorded over all of them.
Oh no.
I think they're gone. I made one video in high school that it was a Spanish class. It was called El Pingüino Solo. And it was about the lonely penguin. I'm sure I fucked up the Spanish translation completely, but I still remember a lot of the lines from it. It's about a lonely penguin and he meets God and he meets a talking hammer. He's like, I remember there was like, "Hola, el pingüino solo. Yo soy Matia Hablador." It's like, "Hello, lonely penguin. I am the talking hammer."
You lost all the footage. I'm so
Esa
sad.
el tío. It is God. Okay,
I'm so
anyway.
sad.
Lego's pricey. No, yeah, I would never, ever buy real Lego ever again in my
No
life.
way.
Real Lego now is like fucking
Why are they that expensive?
extravagantly
Like,
expensive.
what? Why?
It was expensive when I was a kid. I'm not gonna lie. That's why I had a lot of Mega Bloks. Mega Bloks were like the fake Legos, you know. But nowadays, I mean, it's like, holy, it's so expensive now. But they have these great Chinese knockoff Legos. I love them. I use those in my How Anarchism Works videos. I don't use a single real Lego.
It was so awesome making that though because like the Golo and like record videos at the same time. So funny. When are you having the new video how anarchism work?
Oh, I don't know. I did the 5 and 6, and I think after we moved to the mountains, I'm kind of planning big projects to happen after that. Yeah. So yeah, obviously there are autistic people in every country on the planet.
Yes.
We could work on trying to figure out how to connect with those folks. I don't know. I'm sure they have organizations and all that kind of stuff. We just haven't really investigated that. A lot of schools. We'll have to look into that.
Centers.
Well, I mean, like activism and stuff like that. I'm sure they have that. So anyway, we'll check that out. EJ, I want to meet and talk about our old dorky Lego videos we made. I do too. I really would love to talk to you about that. If you ever come to Vietnam, or if we're ever in the same part of the world at any point, let me know. We'd love to talk to you. That was a formative part of my life.
Yeah, right.
It set me on because it showed me that like I can make stuff. I can make art. I can make films. I did all kinds of stuff. They were so silly, but it was so fun.
We have about 2 minutes left. What do you have for lunch? Oh, I want to make chili.
Dude, wait. Can we have chili tomorrow? Because I'm so hungry, and we're already after partying.
Oh.
Can we have?
And tomorrow? We don't have cheese.
And we don't even have cheese. We'll get cheese while we're out.
Okay.
So today, what will we have? What do you want today?
What do you want today? You need to shoot video this afternoon, right?
Yeah, but I finished the script.
We can go to Bobo,
We can go to Bobo.
If lunch is
We can talk about this offline. I don't think people want to watch us talk about what
cares.
we're going to have for lunch. But hold on, a couple more questions before we go.
Okay.
Are there any towns in the mountains of Vietnam you'd recommend looking at?
So many.
I mean, literally. Okay, think about this. Vietnam. Vietnam is like a skinny S, right?
Like this.
And then like half of it is coastline, and then the other half is mountains. So what I would ask you is this: Do you like it more hot? Then I would move into the south. Or do you like it
less
hot? I'd move into the middle. Or do you like it kind of cold? I'd move into the north.
Uh.
It's as simple as that, really.
So the geography of Vietnam is extremely skinny from north to south. So in the east we have the ocean, the beautiful shore, the beaches, and then there's a tiny what do you call it, delta, flatland in the middle, and then the rest of the country.
They have
mountain.
It's funny because for such a relatively, it's not a tiny country, but it's relatively small. But they have every single kind of landscape here. They have deserts with sand dunes.
Yes.
They have swamps.
Yes.
They have cold, chilly mountains with snowy peaks. They have obviously lots of jungle. They have beautiful beaches like here in Da Nang. It's just amazing biodiversity as well. Like there's so many animals and insects. We saw animals that Luna and I don't even know what they are, and you've never even heard of. What were they? They might have been squirrels.
They might have been, but
we weren't sure. No, we saw a squirrel and we saw some other thing. I don't even know what the thing was.
I don't know.
It was like a weird mammal.
The weird mammal that is bigger than a rat.
Yeah. It almost looked like an anteater aardvark, but it wasn't.
It's way smaller than anteater.
And it was fast. Who knows? They have mountain crabs. They have crabs that live in the mountain. I mean, like, not anywhere near the water. I didn't know that was possible.
We walk high up the mountain for 1 day straight, and we saw that crab on that mountain.
Mountain crabs. Wait. We already read that one. Shoot. Okay. Are you saying God is a talking hammer? That's the canon of El Pingüino Solo. Yes. God is a talking hammer that communicates with lonely penguins. Yes. The canon of my first real film that I ever put any real effort into. And of course it was in black and white. Because every student film has to be in black and white.
I remember that's Jason talk about his
bring it on, Zanitha. Bring it on.
Disabled, allowance in the chat, but I couldn't check it out yet. But I just so I know what you talk about, and I know that it's suck. It's just suck. The disabled allowance in the USA is just so unfair, inhuman, and they just rip you off whenever they want to.
When I was a kid, Yassine, we always bought Mega Blocks. They were the cheap Legos. Now there are dozens of them. And the ones I buy in Vietnam they're Chinese and they're really high quality. I think they're called Metro.
Really?
Oh, I cannot remember. Metro? I can't remember. I'll have to find one of my sets and see if I can find a logo or something. Next time I'm in a bookshop, I'll see.
You know what? The best thing of living right next to China is that it's so crazy. Yeah. Whenever we buy something so cheap from China, there's one flat delivery rate.
Mm-hmm.
It's 10,000 dong. It's like 45 cents.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine buying so freaking cheap things from China and you only pay like 45 cents.
They kind of have that in the USA, actually.
Amazing.
One time, listen, I don't even know how this is possible. I think they're laundering money or something. I bought a bike light for the back of my bicycle. This was in the USA. And it was a weird, it was clickbait. It was an ad. It was literally an ad on some other website, and it said, free bicycle light. And I was like, I want a free bicycle light. So I clicked the ad, and I was like, this is probably a scam. But then I filled everything out, and it never asked me for a credit card.
Oh.
And it was like free shipping, free bicycle light. Never asked me for a credit card. And I just filled it all out, and I was like, and I used a burner email address, and I was like, this is probably bullshit, but whatever. And then like 3 months later, I got an envelope, and it had a little bicycle light. It was okay. And I don't understand how or why this happened, and I don't know. I feel like it's some kind of organized crime thing, or like, why would they just do that? It came from China.
That is the thing that they do a lot.
Why?
Give out gifts like that. I don't know.
But it doesn't make any sense at all. I did it almost like half as a joke. I didn't expect it to ever show.
Vietnamese coffee is so good. Remember when we accidentally had a Vietnamese milk coffee? We were both so sensitive to it. But like, it's just free, just drink it. It was so good. Holy shit, in Blonde Pass.
I didn't sleep for days.
So good.
I literally didn't sleep for 2 days.
It was so good.
So delicious. So delicious. we do have a Discord. We kind of keep it a little under wraps.
You know
But
what?
if you contact us and you tell us who you are in the YouTube chat, we can hook you up. noncompete@gmail.com.
I have one question for y'all. Whenever you drink milk coffee,
Mm-hmm.
do you have a diarrhea?
No.
Lots of Vietnamese
I
people
think
have that problem.
that's lactose intolerant. Well, first of all,
Lots of Vietnamese people have that problem.
coffee does get things moving.
Uh,
That's for sure.
uh.
And then if you're lactose intolerant, then do you think that they only usually drink milk in their coffee?
Nah, we drink milk and milk tea or kind of stuff like that, but they only have a diarrhea.
The
after drinking
caffeine
milk coffee.
does get things going. That's all I'm saying. If remember when I quit drinking caffeine? I got stopped up for like a couple of months.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
You didn't tell me that. Oh,
It was like just a little slower. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Everything was just a little bit less efficient. This is the TMI portion of the stream.
coffee doesn't give you diarrhea.
It just makes
make
you poop, which is a difference. Diarrhea is when it's like, well, it's part of life. I don't know. Luna said the D word of liquid human waste. Diarrhea, cha-cha-cha. That's an old Beavis and Butthead joke. Only true connoisseurs of quality entertainment will know what I'm talking about.
Coffee definitely makes me want to really quick in the morning.
This is going to make everybody who watches the VOD wish that they signed up for Luna Oi Live earlier so they could be involved with these discussions.
With the pee talk.
And the poo talk.
And the poo talk.
Poo.
I really hate it. You know, the Beavis.
Luna hates my Beavis and Butthead impressions.
I hate it
and
so
she hates
fucking
my
much.
Pee Wee Herman.
Please stop.
I know you
are, but what am
I?
Grace. This is what I have to put up with, comrade. It's just Beavis and what?
Butthead.
And
Pee Wee Herman?
Pee Wee.
You love Pee Wee Herman, though. You did enjoy that movie.
The red bicycle, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
All right, folks. I'm going to leave now. I am hungry, and I'm going to go put pants on. Things you got to do when you leave the house.
He's not wearing pants right now, so just so you know.
I've never kept that a secret. I've always been open and transparent about my lack of pants. I just don't show you out of respect. And for the terms of service, but y'all never get to see these beefy legs.
Juicy butt.
She said it, not me. I am Cornholio.
You sure you get stuff way cheaper cost you next to China? Awesome. Yeah, pretty awesome, I gotta say.
Wait, what? You get stuff way cheaper because you're next to China? Well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's just the way it is. All right, I'm leaving. Goodbye.
Bye.
You can wrap up the stream, right? You don't need
I mean, please subscribe to my Luna Oi channel because this is gonna be like the surprise
and I'll
after
say it.
party.
I'll say it because Luna won't. Support Luna on Patreon and Camaraderie so she could buy more of this shit and put them together on stream. Because this was like $15. So
look at how careful EJ is because he's not wearing pants. He's not
I
wearing
have to lean
pants.
in. I have to come in
Bye,
laterally.
buddy. Just say it. Just admit it. How many of you not wearing pants at home? I will see the answer and then.
At home, then I'm sorry.
If you are wearing pants at home, what's wrong with you? Just kidding. I mean, okay, subscribe to my Luna Oi Live. This is like the surprise fun stream that we sometimes you're gonna have. Bye, everybody. See you next time. Nobody wants to talk about whether they have to wear pants at home or not, huh? Okay. Okay, Zenitha said I'm on pants. K-Claw, death to pants. Okay, bye everybody. See you next time.